we go.
Board, we're about to do it. Good afternoon. The time is now 1:02 p.m. and a quorum of the board is present. The State Board of Education regular meeting of December 8th, 2020 is reconvened. Marilyn, are there individuals who wish to address the board during today's meeting?
There are, and I will read the rules for public comment. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to address the board, and I will keep track of time. We will be strictly following the time limit, so everybody has an opportunity to speak because we do have multiple speakers today. It's the practice of the board not to respond to comments during the public participation portion of the meeting. We will maintain an atmosphere of respect for all people. I'm hearing feedback in the background if people could check their mics. And disrespecting anyone by name or otherwise will be asked to cease. And Mike Flaminio, can you let the first caller in?
First caller's in.
Hello, do I have a caller?
Who is it?
Hello,
Hello.
This is Marilyn. Can you please state your name and where you're from, and then I will be timing this for 3 minutes for your comments. Thanks for calling in.
Well, this is Dr. Richard Ziley, former member of the State Board of Education and co-president for 2 years. My comments, first of all, I wanted to wish Dr. Rice every blessing, that he might be a good steward and instrument of blessing for our schools and our workers, as the late Brian Whiston and the wonderful Mike Flanagan were. I'm here to speak on the last meeting of Lupe Ramos-Montini and Michelle Fecto. I had the great privilege of serving with each of you for 6 years on the board, and I have words of congratulations and disappointment. I'm disappointed that you're not going to serve another term. I deeply respected the background that you both brought to the board, and your manner of seeking out what is best through our process. Lupe, you had background in agriculture and came up through a profession and leadership and education and community service, and I so deeply respect the experiences and perspective that you bring to the table, and your personal kindness to me and your independent thinking. It's really been an inspiration to know you. And Michelle, I remember playing soccer with Eddie there. He was a much better player, but there in Rosedale Park. But I so deeply respect your work in union work, and in especially your devotion to family, and all the blessing that you have provided to so many, and your outside interests like storytelling. What a great system we have, where people like ourselves who come from different walks of life have this opportunity for public service, holding our professionals accountable to a board of lay trustees. Again, your personal friendship has meant so much to me in the 6 years on the board. We didn't always agree on, well, we agreed about 85% of the time, but the way we handled our disagreements, I think, was a very uplifting, edifying, mutually informative, and as Lupe said, thanks to you, my colleagues, I'm a different person, and I trust a better person. Just a word of thanks and recognition to other colleagues, Cassandra and Pam and Nikki and Tom. If you ever leave the board, maybe I'll say some nice things about you, and especially Marilyn Schneider for your professional work. As someone else has said earlier, you made it look so easy, and you made it so pleasant for us who served on the board. God bless you all. Merry Christmas, blessing New Year. And the good news for Lupe and Michelle is that after 8 years of reading education policy, it is nice to read something else for a while.
Thank you, Dr. Ziley.
It's an honor to be with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have another caller, Mike?
And they should be in.
Hello, is there a caller there?
Yes, hi, this is Kathy Lester.
Okay, Kathy, can you tell the people who you represent and where you're from? And I will start a timer for 3 minutes of public comment. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Superintendent Dr. Rice and the State Board of Education members. I'm Kathy Lester, Library Media Specialist in Plymouth-Canton Community Schools, and I'm here representing the Michigan Association for Media and Education, Maim, which is the professional organization for certified school librarians in Michigan, and we're affiliated with the American Association for School Librarians. It's my great honor and pleasure to be here today to announce that Michelle Bectow has received the Maim 2020 School Library Champion Award. Throughout her years on the State Board of Education, Michelle has been a strong advocate for equity of access for all students in Michigan to effective school libraries staffed by certified school librarians. Michelle has recognized that certified school librarians serve a critical role in increasing student achievement, especially the achievement of students who are economically disadvantaged, Black, Hispanic, or have disabilities. Michelle's passion and dedication to provide an equitable, high-quality education for all students in Michigan and her concern for teachers, support staff, administrators, and families throughout her tenure on the State Board of Education have been very apparent to myself and other Maim members who have watched the State Board of Education proceedings over the years. This Maim selected Michelle for our 2020 School Library Champion Award. This award was presented to her during our November 19th, 2020 Virtual President's Award Gala. Michelle's commitment to students and to the entire education community is so very appreciative, and we're certainly going to miss her on the State Board of Education. Thank you so much, Michelle. So please join me in congratulating Michelle for her dedication to students, families, and educators, and for being a true school library champion. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing good news, Kathy. And
Hello.
Mike, do we have another caller?
Yep, they're on.
Hi, if the caller could please state their name and who you represent, I will start a timer for 3 minutes. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. I'm Ciac, Library Media Specialist for Saginaw Township Community Schools and current president of the Michigan Association for Media and Education, Maim.
Thank you so much, Michelle. So please join me in congratulating Michelle for her dedication to students, families, and educators, and for being a true school library champion.
Ken, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Marilyn. We're getting feedback. So if the speaker would be the only person with their sound on, that would be helpful.
Hi, caller, can please state their name and who you represent. I will start a timer for 3 minutes. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Ciac, Library Media Specialist for Saginaw Township Community Schools and the current president of the Michigan Association for Media and Education, Maim. The Michigan Association of Media and Education, Maim, is a professional organization for certified school librarians in Michigan and is affiliated with the American Association for School Librarians, AASL. We have a strong commitment to providing all students with diverse resources in order for all students to see themselves and to see others as they learn about themselves and how to engage in our diverse world. I get the honor today to announce the release of the Myself in Books, a Maim diverse book list. Myself in Books is an annual list of diverse books for Michigan learners. The list will be selected each year by a committee of certified school librarians who are members of Maim. These recommendations are based on books that librarians see learners enjoying and reading in their libraries. The books are all published in the last 2 years and written by own voice authors and will include books for all grade levels, pre-K through 12. A Maim committee has been working since this past spring to select the diverse books for the first Myself in Books list. This year's committee consisted of 14 teacher librarians from around the state of Michigan who were all Maim members. The committee sought suggestions for titles for all of the Maim membership. To review each title, we used a rubric that allowed for more consistent review. This rubric was adopted from the Teaching Tolerance Text Selections tool. We reviewed what type of diversity and representation was present, looked for any generalizations, stereotypes, or misrepresentations, and looked for authentic voices from our own voice authors. Maim's Winter Getaway Workshop on January 30th, 2021, diving deeper into diverse books, will be highlighting the Myself in Books list with keynote authors, book talks, and activities that can be used in both classrooms and libraries. The complete list of Myself in Books and details about the Winter Getaway, diving deeper into diversity, can be found on the Michigan Association for Media and Education website at www.mimame.org. I'd like to recognize the committee and the co-chairs for their hours of work to make this possible. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. And do we have another caller?
One moment.
Thanks for
Okay.
your help with this, Mike. Hi,
Okay.
do we have a caller?
Yes, my name is Maurice Morton.
Thank you, Mr. Morton. Will you please let us know where you're from, and then I will start a timer for 3 minutes of public comment. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. My name is Maurice Morton again. I am from Detroit Academy of Arts and Sciences, located in the heart of Detroit. I am the CEO. It is a charter school in the city of Detroit. I'm calling concerning, there was a Michigan Civil Rights Commission meeting recently, and at that meeting they discussed a report which recommended funding cuts to charter schools in the amount of 25%. At that meeting, Dr. Pugh did speak, who's a member of your board, and stated her support for that recommendation. I am speaking because we strongly object to the recommendation and to any support of the recommendation. Our schools serve mostly at-risk minority children, and cutting of funding of 25% would devastate our students. Such a proposal to cut 25% is no different than valuing our students as 3/4 a person, which is reminiscent of the 3/5 Compromise Act of 1787 that valued African Americans or Blacks as 3/5 of a citizen. That is totally unacceptable, and our children deserve better. We are public schools, and we do follow all the same rules and regulations as other traditional schools. Thank you for your time. I want to thank Dr. Rice as well as the other board members. Thank you.
Thank you for calling in. Do we have another caller?
Okay, should be in.
Hello, if you can please state your name and where you're from, and I will have a timer for 3 minutes of public comment. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Ali Bazzi. I'm over at Star International Academy in Dearborn Heights.
Please continue.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to talk this afternoon. As a charter school educator, I strongly object to what Dr. Pugh said is saying about charter schools, particularly her stance that our students are only worth 3/4 of a person. This stance is no different than the 3/5 Compromise of 1787. Is that the message that we are sending our children? How can we teach children to trust the democratic process when in fact they are not represented as a whole person? Our school serves mostly at-risk minority children that are worthy of a good education at our academies. We've just learned that we have a student who received a scholarship to attend Yale University, an Ivy League school. Is she 3/4 of a person because she attended our school? We are a public school that follows the same rules and regulations as a traditional public school. We exist to provide a fundamental right of choice to our community. We will continue to exist for years to come. We will not accept any student to be stigmatized by net worth or arbitrary value because someone said so. These funding proposal cuts will hurt children. Thank you.
Thank you for calling in. And Mike, I believe we have one final caller. Is that accurate? For your comment.
Pardon me?
Hi,
Hello.
we have a caller
Hi.
on the line. If you could please state your name and where you're from, and thank you for calling in. I will start the timer for 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Crystal Drew, and I am from Flint, Michigan. And as a charter school educator, I strongly object to what Dr. Pugh said about charter schools, particularly her stance that our students are only worth 3/4 of a person. Our school serves mostly at-risk minority children, and cutting our funding 25% would devastate our students. As a charter school in Flint, Michigan, I service all students with all abilities. We are a school where currently 52% of all students are achieving academic honor roll status in a global pandemic. And this is due to the hard work, the diligent and mission-minded work of charter school educators. We are public school academies. We are required to follow the same rules and regulations of public schools, and this includes special education funding, special education. As an autism mom, I know that equity is providing choice for all students to succeed in an environment that is conducive to them. So I am grateful for charters providing choice to our students, and particularly our students in Flint, Michigan. I hope that you all would see the transparency, the equity, and the hope that charter schools bring to our state and fully fund our students, because that is the only equitable thing to do. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
Thank you for calling in. I do not believe there are any more public comment. Am I right, Mike?
That's correct.
Okay, this concludes public comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to people who took the time to come to our state board meeting today to provide comments. We are now at our next agenda item. It's the monthly presentation on the top 10 strategic education plan, goal to increase percentage of adults with post-secondary credentials. This presentation on the top 10 strategic education plan will highlight goal number 6, to increase the percentage of adults with a post-secondary credential. Following the presentation, we will engage in further conversation with the board about the efforts to increase the percentage of adults in Michigan with a post-secondary certificate or degree. This is an informational presentation and does not require board action. Our presenters this afternoon are Dr. Koenigsegg, Dr. Piles, and Ms. Kelly Siciliano-Carter, Director of Strategic Planning and Implementation. Presenters, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rice. Good afternoon, everyone. Today's Top 10 Strategic Education Plan presentation is the 4th in a series on the goals and metrics included in Michigan's Strategic Education Plan. Dr. Scott Koenigsegg, Dr. Brian Piles, and I appreciate the opportunity to continue this series of presentations to the State Board of Education. The 8 goals in Michigan's Strategic Education Plan are listed on this slide. As a quick reminder, during the September State Board of Education meeting, we engaged in our first presentation on metrics, and we chose the 5th goal, which was to increase the percentage of all students who graduate from high school. At the October State Board of Education meeting, we provided a presentation on goal 1, which was related to the metrics of expanding early childhood learning opportunities. And in November, we shared the metrics related to goal number 7, which is increase the number of certified teachers in areas of shortage. And today's presentation, as Dr. Rice mentioned, will be focusing on the 6th goal, which is listed on the slide, which is increase the percentage of adults with a post-secondary credential. The goal of increasing the percentage of adults with a post-secondary credential is a direct connection to a goal of Governor Whitmer's. More specifically, her statewide goal is to increase the number of Michiganders with a post-secondary credential to 60% by 2030. Therefore, this goal is shared across many state departments. Later in the presentation, for example, some of the work that the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity is doing will be shared with you. So within the top 10 strategic education plan, the metric that was selected for this goal is the number of adults with a certificate or degree or a post-secondary credential. So with that, Drs. Koenigsegg and Piles will present data for this metric, and share a variety of efforts that MDE and other departments are doing to impact this goal. So I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Kenishek this time to start the portion of his presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kelly. So we have a number of slides after this slide that are going to contain data that Dr. Powles is going to review around the metric itself. And the data that's provided comes from the Lumina Foundation. Lumina Foundation is an Indianapolis-based private independent foundation that strives to help people achieve their potential by expanding access and success in education beyond high school through grants for research, innovation, communication, and evaluation, as well as policy education and leadership development. The Lumina Foundation addresses issues that affect access and educational attainment among all students, particularly underserved student groups. The data that Dr. Powles will review is published on an annual basis in the Stronger Nation report. With that, I will turn it over to Dr. Powles to walk us through some of the data.
Thank you. Next slide. Looking at the table presented, you'll notice that in 2015, 43.4% of Michiganders met the criteria. And as you look across the years, you'll see that we've had a 5.5 percentage point change. And as noted in the footnote, they did expand the definition in 2018 to include outside of work environment certificates that were certificates that were earned that were recognized as post-secondary credentials. Next slide. When you look at the breakdown, you'll see the short-term credentials are 7.4%, going to 10.3% for associate's degrees, 19% for bachelor's degrees, and 11% for graduate or professional degrees, getting us to our total percentage of 48.9%. Next slide, please. When we look at what we're doing here at the Michigan Department of Education, and we think about what we're doing in career and technical education, and specifically in our Perkins funded programs, we have several post-secondary recognized credentials that are identified in each of these CTE programs. For example, there are several listed under computer informations and networking and telecommunications systems. From CompTIA to Cisco to Certiport, there's a variety of credentials that are recognized by post-secondary for our students, and these are certificates that are attainable through a 1 to 2 year current tech ed program in our high schools and our county technical campuses. We also have certificates in line worker programs, as we know there's going to be a shortage of line workers in the near future, as many of our line workers are over the age of 60. And we also have some certificates that we offer for students in welding and our automotive programs, including automotive collision. And so at the department, we are working to contribute to this number as our overall state's goal is set by Governor Whitmer. Also, the career pathway programs of study. So when we were talking earlier, and we were about students and their futures and how we're working with our students to ensure that they're still going to have the information they need to make those post-secondary decisions and potentially workplace decisions. We have career pathway programs of study across the state by region that show the students the coursework they need to complete and then the stackable credentials that they could receive. Because oftentimes it's a goal of ours to help the students get their first credential, say, such as a certified nursing assistant. That is a good credential for a student that would help them with their next step, maybe toward an ASN for nursing, toward the bachelor degree, RN degree. But they stack up, and they're really good for students in case life happens. And sometimes there's some delays. And if you can capture these credentials along the way, not only does it help build us toward our state goal, but it really gives that individual student the credential they need so that they can have the best position for themselves and earning power. Our early middle college programs, as many of you know, is a blended high school and post-secondary coursework program where students begin taking college courses as early as 9th grade. Most of them begin in 11th grade, culminating in the 5th year of high school for the or what we commonly call the 13th year. And the outcomes for the early middle college program includes associate's degrees, credentials and certificates, and apprenticeship certificates. And so this continues to build toward that 30 by 60 goal. Our advanced placement programs are offered across the state in many of our high schools, where students complete the advanced placement curriculum and then take the assessment and then earn, while in high school, their college credit for when they attend college and university. And then for our special education students in transition services, each of those students develop a post-high school success plan while in high school. And within those plans, they include career goals and credential goals and a pathway to help the student identify the type of certificate they would be interested in earning, with the goal of making all of our students across all of our programs self-sufficient. And so we have a variety of programs here in the department that are offered through our high schools and county technical campuses across many student populations that support this goal. Next slide, please. And I'll hand off to Dr. Kenishek.
Great, thank you, Dr. Piles. So as Dr. Piles highlighted, that there is a great deal of work going on within the department and also within our school districts, but there's also a great deal of work going on across state government. We have many partners in this effort, including LEO, MDHHS, and also the Department of Corrections. And so we've got a couple of examples we'd like to share with you where other departments and offices are working to also boost the percentage of adults with post-secondary credentials. One of the programs you probably have heard about is the Future for Frontliners program. This offers essential workers an opportunity to complete high school or community college tuition free. That is set to roll out, I believe, in the fall of 2021. There are two other programs within LEO that are focused more on the skilled trades, including Skills to Work, as well as Going Pro in Michigan, again, focusing on high demand careers like healthcare, IT, advanced manufacturing, construction, and automotive. Next slide, please. We also have work going on. I mentioned DHHS. Within DHHS is an office called MRS, Michigan Rehabilitation Services, and they work closely with the Michigan Career and Technical Institute. And this is an institute, an entity that serves students with disabilities. It's located in Plainwell, Michigan. And they develop customized workforce solutions for businesses and for individuals, again, with disabilities. They have a multitude of programs. We've listed 3 of them here. They have an automotive technology program that prepares students for entry-level careers in 7 different areas of specialization, and they work to become certified through the state of Michigan or through the National Institute for Automotive Services Excellence. Again, they have a certified nursing assistant program. This again allows them to actually earn a CNA and become a certified nursing assistant. They first learn patient care techniques in a simulated lab environment in a classroom, and then they go on clinical rotations at a nursing home. And again, when they complete the program, if they pass the exam, they earn their CNA. And finally, they have an IT program as well. They have 10 internally recognized IT certifications. The program is recognized by CompTIA and Cisco Networking Academy. It also includes a well-equipped computer lab that provides a realistic setting for up-to-date hands-on training. The students spend approximately 30 hours a week maintaining and repairing office management systems, computers, laptops, mobile devices, copiers, printers, and other office equipment. And again, they have 10 recognized certifications. Some you may recognize as Microsoft Windows Server Administration Fundamentals, Microsoft Network Fundamentals, and Microsoft Security Fundamentals. Those are just 3 of the 10. So students participating in this program and exiting this program certainly have the opportunity to leave with that post-secondary credential. Next slide. A couple other programs, again, that our partner departments or institutions are fostering. Michigan's Reconnect grant program. This was signed into law back in April. It provides financial assistance to folks that are over 25 seeking an associate's degree or industry recognized credential. And then we highlighted also what's called the Offender Success Program, which our partners in the Department of Corrections house and utilize. And it focuses on prisoner education that provides academic, technical, and workplace skills for prisoners to be able to obtain a GED. So we wanted to highlight not only our efforts, as Dr. Piles did, but efforts that are going on within our partners, partner departments within state government as well. Next slide. With that, we will entertain any questions that you may have for us this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Koenigsegg, Dr. Piles, Ms. Carter. Questions or comments from our board members? Questions or comments? And I'm having a little bit of trouble with the chat, so if you can raise your physical hand, that would be great.
I can see Cassandra. I can see the chat. It looks like Cassandra has a question and Nikki has a comment, Dr. Rice.
There we go. Thank you very much. President Aldrich.
Thank you. So just wanted to thank you for this information. It's always helpful to see where we're at and some great programs that are happening in the state. I just had a quick question. Someone needs to mute. I had a quick question about whatever happened to the Marshall Plan, the $100 million that went into a program that was supposed to assist in this. Do we ever get any data back from that, or what happened there?
So I can start with what I know, and others might be able to fill in. And so the portion of the Marshall Plan funding that was distributed to the successful grantees is being managed over in Labor and Economic Opportunity over in Leo. I do hear different CPED directors talk about the Marshall Plan for Talent consortiums they're a part of and the work they're continuing to do, and employing career navigators, providing opportunities for credentials. And so I believe that within the regions where those dollars were granted, there's still a strong connection between our secondary career and technical education programs, our post-secondary programs, our apprenticeship individuals and labor organizations, and it's kind of just whatever. Each one is a little bit of a different design, but I know the one Marshall Plan for Talent grant that was awarded that was running from Saginaw all the way over to Muskegon. I know they're still actively engaged, and I sometimes see some of the work on LinkedIn that they're doing and the work that they're doing with student tours and student placements, and the money that was distributed, I believe that people are carrying out from what I've seen. The data, though, goes back to our friends over at Leo.
Thank you, Dr. Piles. Ms. Snyder and then Ms. Ramos-Montini.
In here. I just wanted to say thank you for the efforts in this area. I think it's a really important area as we move forward, and so thank you for the presentation and for those efforts.
Thank you. Ms. Ramos-Montini. No, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep,
yes?
You bet.
I want to echo what Nikki just said. This is one fantastic program. And right now in this pandemic, people are looking for opportunities to upgrade or change their professional or their careers. And so this is a promising program that will inspire a lot of different people out there that are looking for something like this. So thank you so much for your work. Your presentation was extraordinary. You know your content and you present it very well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. McMillan, a comment?
Well, maybe it's a question. Dr. Koenigsegg. Oh, okay. Dr. Koenigsegg, so I think it was the last thing you mentioned, was it Citrix, or was it some kind of a university, or it was a computer, or maybe one of you guys some kind of a computer university or?
So I referenced MCTI, which is the Michigan Career Technical Institute in Plainwell that focuses on providing post-secondary credentials to students with disabilities. And then within MCTI or at MCTI, they have an IT program.
Okay.
Where students, young adults with disabilities, can earn one of 10 internationally recognized credentials, and I listed 3 or 4 of them. There's more if you'd like to know more.
No, but that's during high school up till 12th grade, right?
That is after high school.
Okay.
That is after high school. To Dr. Piles' point, students with IEPs have a transition plan, and the parents and school folks get together to build that plan. And for some students, that part of that plan involves them attending MCTI.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure I got that clear. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Dr. Konishek, may I add just one little point about MCTI? MCTI is a post-secondary recognized institution. They're a Pell eligible agency. They're just like a community college. And I would encourage anyone to tour that facility, because I believe the programs they offer rival the programs offered in community colleges and our county technical and high school CTE programs across the state. It's very impressive.
Thank you. Ms. Fecto?
Yeah, I actually toured the program for looking for one of my sons, and it looked pretty impressive. I just wish there was more of them, maybe on the other side of the state as well. I got in a car accident on my way there. It's far away in wintertime when I went out there. But it is a really remarkable program, and it's residential, and I think it's just a really wonderful program. My question was about Lumina. And I'm trying to recall, I remember there was a 2012, some articles written in some of the higher ed journals and Inside Higher Ed and Chronicle of Higher Ed. We had some criticisms of Lumina, and so one of them is that when they were developing their plans, they did not include, establishment higher ed people. I mean, this is 2012, so maybe things have changed. But they had this idea of disrupting, traditional education. They were looking at competency-based learning, a lot of it online learning, more affordable because it's online learning. So I'm not sure if these same approaches. I also know they had some questions because they also provided loans at some point. And got into some controversy around their loaning. But so in terms of how they will be integrated in Michigan, are they looking at competency-based, where in terms of not seat time, but just you pass a test and you can move ahead, and where it's basically delivered predominantly online? Is that the idea for Michigan?
No, the only reference to Lumina in the presentation, Michelle, was the fact that's where we gathered the data from a report they put out called the Stronger Nation Report. So there are no conversations that I'm aware of or part of around anything instructional. Simply that the data that Dr. Powell shared is from a report that they do on an annual basis called the Stronger Nation. That's the reference to Lumina.
Okay, so we're not looking at this competency-based online higher education model.
No, we're just using data from a report that they publish on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you.
You bet, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Ms. Johnson, anything that you care to share?
No, I really appreciate Scott and Brian, providing a landscape overview of some of the work that we're really proud of in Leo in terms of launching the Futures for Frontliners program. We are still the only state to have used gear funding for this purpose, and we think it's a really valuable one, and are really proud of the bipartisan action that we took with the legislature to get Reconnect across the finish line during this pandemic year, which was no small feat. And so we think that these programs really are a game changer for our
big goal of 60% by 2030, and really applaud the department in your strategic plan for really joining us in prioritizing post-secondary transitions.
Thank you. And we have had the opportunity to meet with Katie Ebersol, who's now leading up this effort in Leo, and we look forward to more work with her in the future. Anything more on behalf of board members? Going once, twice, and we're done. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Ms. Carter. Next agenda item is a presentation on Special Education Advisory Committee Annual Report for 2019-2020. Special Education Advisory Committee is mandated by IDEA to advise the SEA and by Michigan law to advise the State Board of Education regarding special education issues. Today's presentation on the annual report summarizes the work of Ciac during the past year. This is an informational presentation and does not require board action. Our presenters are Dr. Kenishnek, Ms. Rink, and Ms. Terry Pettit, our Ciac facilitator. Gentle people, welcome.
All right, thank you, Dr. Rice, and thank you again, board, for some time to give a brief update on the annual report of Ciac. Each of you received a link to this report. It's about 20 pages, contains a variety of information in terms of a look back, much like the department's annual report we do on a yearly basis. Terry Pettit, the facilitator of Ciac, and Terry Rink both joined me. I'm going to turn it over to Terry Pettit to give, again, just a brief overview this afternoon of the 2020 annual report. Terry?
Thank you, Scott. Is everybody able to see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good, perfect, okay. Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and I am Terry Pettit. I'm the facilitator for Special Ed Advisory Committee, and as Dr. Rice and Scott indicated, I am here today to provide a brief overview of Ciac's annual report for the 2019-2020 school year. The first thing I would like to do is just quickly review our mission and purpose. The mission of Ciac is to promote positive outcomes for all Michigan students with disabilities by first gathering and sharing and disseminating information, second, communicating with our stakeholders, third, identifying any unmet needs in the state, fourth, collaborating with the Office of Special Education, and lastly, advising you, the State Board of Education. Ciac is mandated in the Individuals with Disabilities Act, I'll refer to that as IDEA from here on out, of 2004, and it serves the state advisory panel to the Michigan Department of Education and to the State Board. We primarily have 6 functions that we are responsible for, and these are discussed in more detail in the report. I'm just going to go over them very quickly. Our first duty is to advise the MDE on unmet needs in the education of students with disabilities. In so doing, we call on the expertise of a variety of Michigan agencies serving as ex officios. We have 19 members out of our 77 total that serve in this capacity on Ciac. These members join us from various offices within the Michigan Department of Corrections, within the Michigan Department of Education, and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Unmet needs are discovered in a variety of ways, including comments that we might hear at the State Board of Education meetings, experience and concerns of Ciac members that represent a variety of viewpoints. 51% of our members are mandated to be parents of children that have individualized education programs, or IEPs, or they are members that have disabilities themselves. So through this interagency work and with the Family Matters Engagement Work Group, the MDE Path Forward Steering Committee and Work Group, and the Michigan Education Research Institute Advisory Council. So we have lots of voices at our table when we talk about special education and the unmet needs of our students. Our second duty is to comment publicly on any rules or regulations proposed by the state regarding the education of children with disabilities. Last year, the Ciac was involved in public comment in 2 Senate bills that were introduced. The first was Senate Bill 600, That proposed legislation was to remove a number of Michigan merit curriculum credit requirements, and of particular interest to the members in Ciac was the proposed elimination of the personal curriculum, or PC, which would have adversely affected students with disabilities by limiting the personalization and accommodations of learner needs. The second bill was Senate Bill 657. That was the second written comment that we provided that year. And we provided 22 recommendations for both the Senate and the House to consider regarding the shortage of teachers available to work with all students, and most specifically for teachers for our special needs students. Our third duty is to develop evaluations and report on data. The IDEA requires each state submit data about preschool children with disabilities receiving special education and related services. And additionally, we seek out advice on target resetting for the state performance plan indicators. Last year, there were no indicators scheduled for target reset by the Federal Office of Special Education Programs in DC. This year, they all are. So we're doing a lot of work, and you'll hear a lot more about that in our next year's annual report. Our fourth duty is to advise the MDE in the development of corrective action plans. There were no corrective action plans required for the 2019-20 school year. Ciac members were provided with a detailed description of the MDE path forward work from the previous year, showing successful movement out of the needing substantial intervention in implementing the requirement of IDEA's Part B by improving Michigan's overall percentage in the federal determination process. That's a mouthful, sorry. The fifth one, Ciac's fifth responsibility is to advise the MDE in the development and implementation of policies related to the coordination of services for children that have disabilities. So we were actively involved in the Path Forward work that was led by Dr. Kinishnecht and is noted in the Path Forward Strategic Action Plan. The Ciac facilitator and rotating executive committee members attend each of the State Board of Education meetings and report back to the Committee of the Whole each month, so they get to see exactly the work that you are doing there. And additionally, the Ciac regularly invites members of both the MDE and the State Board to come and present and participate with us in various Ciac meetings throughout the year. And then finally, our sixth responsibility is to receive findings and decisions related to special education on fully adjudicated due process complaints. So the Ciac engaged in detailed discussions of 2 such hearings last year, reflecting a pattern of unmet needs, and then provided input to the Office of Special Education Personnel. Our 3 priorities for 2019 and 2020 were to first start early in identifying students at risk regarding their likelihood of being able to earn a Michigan diploma, and to intervene early to keep diploma options open. Our second goal was to provide professional learning opportunities regarding effective strategies likely to increase the likelihood of more students with IEPs developing the skills necessary to be able to earn a diploma. And our third was systems change, to explore diploma options, as Dr. King reported on earlier, allowing additional students with IEPs to graduate with diplomas and explore the implications of each option for students and other key stakeholders. In an effort to meet those 3 priorities, we provided information to prepare Ciac members for their advisory role, including we did trainings on the EWIMS that Dr. King mentioned earlier, Michigan's Early Warning Intervention and Monitoring System. We had training on the Michigan Multi-Tiered System of Supports, the MTSS, which was previously called MyBlissy. We had Family Matters come. They prepared documents for parents and families regarding special education. We had personal curriculum updates from people at the MDE. We had legislative reviews with Carolyn Lethan, and OSA updates regarding program accountability, financing, state performance plan, and understanding data that happen every single month. Then came the pandemic. So beginning in March, we saw the statewide closure of buildings and schools, resulting in a quick departure from education as we've become accustomed to it, to a new way of learning for all, or as it became coined, our new normal. Through the assistance of Terry Rink and the Office of Special Education, the Ciac was able to meet continuously in the following months, with our primary focus moving away from our priorities that we had previously set to addressing what we needed to do to work with students with disabilities and understand best practices for providing that free, appropriate public education as was required by IDEA through a pandemic. So that's a lot of information. There, like was reported earlier, there's about 20 pages in this report, and I would encourage you to please read it. And thank you very much for allowing me the time to present the important work of our Ciac members. We appreciate your continued support as we seek to meet the needs of students with disabilities in Michigan. The next slide here will show you my contact information as well as Terry Rink's contact information should you have any additional questions. And if you have any questions now, Terry Rink, Dr. K, and I are all available. We're all here, we're all online, and we're able to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from board members? Ms. Vecto, a comment.
Yeah, just a comment. You know, I've had the opportunity to sit in on a number of Ciac meetings, and it is a very broad group that covers a lot of stakeholders in this area. There's a wealth of information, and I know that many come and they receive a lot of information from MDE, but they are also a really great vehicle to get information back to MDE and to the board. And I just want to thank Terry for her leadership, and she's worked really hard, and I think she's done a really great job on being a leader who not only helps disseminate information, but responds and works to give information back. And so I just would encourage the board, whoever is here. I know also Nikki has participated in these meetings, and I know these issues are near and dear to her heart as well. Just to keep those lines of communication open and use them, call on them if there are issues that you would like their input on from the board or back to the board. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you, Terry, and Terry Rink as well for all the work you do with Ciac. It's a very valuable part of our organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Ms. Vecto. Any other comments from state board members? If not, I want to thank Dr. K and Ms. Rink and Ms. Pettit. And you did such a good job that I'd like you to stay for the next presentation. Next agenda item is approval of nominations to the Special Education Advisory Committee, to Ciac. Today, the board is being asked to approve nominations to Ciac. There are 16 vacancies, including 1 organizational delegate, 3 organizational alternate delegates, 7 ex officio delegates, 3 member at-large delegates, and 2 member at-large in reserve delegates for terms that expired or were not completed. The board is being asked to approve the nominations during today's meeting. We have our presenters before us. If I could begin, actually, let's put the motion on the table if we could, please. May I please have a motion?
So moved.
Motion
Second.
to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second. And then if we could have the presentation and then the discussion to follow.
So thank you, Dr. Rice. We have no formal PowerPoint presentation for you this morning. You received information in your packet a number of months ago. There were some questions regarding that. We tried to identify the answers to those questions and share that back with you as the board, or to the board. And so we would certainly entertain any additional questions that you may have for us this afternoon.
Questions or comments? Otherwise, we will move to the vote.
I have a question.
Mr. McMillan?
So of these, the affiliations, the ones that say member at large, how are those determined? Are those the ones that there's an opportunity for board members, our board, to suggest members? And how are those, who made those decisions on those people?
So Terry, would you like to field that, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to share. Those are the parents. That's the 51% that we are required by IDEA to have in our meetings. And I know Dr. Pugh recommended a gentleman with autism who was one of the nominees for this. And then anybody can apply for it, but we're always looking for that diverse population. So for instance, we had a woman who applied who has a lot of experience. She's a social worker, works with special needs kids every single day, and represents the Jewish community. We haven't had that person or representing the Jewish community, so we were able to do that. So those people were chosen based on looking at diversity in a lot of different ways and what they could bring to the group, with the primary piece being that they had to meet that 51%. They either have to be a person with a disability themselves or have a child with a disability. We have 2 of our members at large that do not meet that intentionally, just so we could have additional voices in the room, but primarily they fall into that 51%.
So who did the specific selection? Like, was it you? Was it Dr. Kenish? I mean, was it a committee? Who decided
committee.
Beth and Xavier and Kimberly? Which person said they're in and they're not?
I accepted everybody that wanted to apply. I took in every single application.
Oh, okay.
And then what we do is we have a rubric that really deals with, we put it together about 4 years ago, that deals with all the various aspects of diversity. And we asked the executive committee, which is 8 members, to go through that and to look at each one individually, each application individually, to see what that person could bring to our table that would be different and from the rest of the members. And for instance, we've never had anyone that had a preschool child before, and we just introduced 2 new preschool openings into from the agency perspective. So it was important to have a parent that had a child with preschool experience. We have another parent who's on there now who has a child who is representing that 18 to 26 group. We haven't had parents representing that oldest group and that youngest group before. Now we do. So, but all of these were given to the executive committee, who then scored them. It was a unanimous decision on the people that were chosen based on what they brought to the table and what was different about them and what they could offer back out into their communities.
Okay.
And then if it had not been unanimous, we would have taken it to the committee of the whole. And then we make our recommendations. We let Dr. K and Terry Rink know these are our recommendations, and then they approve them so they can then come on to the board.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Terry, is there anything you wanted to add?
Terry, you are on mute.
Under IDEA, when we talk about diversity, the first thing we have to consider are kids with disabilities and whether or not we have representation of the 13 categories of eligibility in our state. And beyond that, we try to get more diverse in terms of additional perspectives that parents and agencies and community members can lend to the larger committee's discussion overall.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none. Marilyn, if we could do a roll call vote, please.
Fecto? Fecto?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Ramos Montini?
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Tilly,
Yes.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Unanimous approval.
Very good, thank you. We're at the approval of minutes of regular and committee of the whole meeting of November 10th. May I please have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular and committee of the whole meeting of November 10th, 2020?
So
Got a motion, and I believe I heard a second as well. Any discussion? Hearing none, if we could do a roll call vote, please.
Bechtel,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
See you shake your head. Ramos Montini,
yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Tilly,
Yes.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Unanimous approval.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. We are at the point in our board agenda where we hear the report of the board president, President Albrecht. Do you have a report for us today?
I do have a report, and thank you very much. Before I get into some comments about Lupe and Michelle, I wanted to just mention a few things. First of all, congratulations to the department on the SEL grant. I think that this will do some great work, and thank you to the 10 to 20 districts that are going to be creating a model for the rest of the state. We appreciate the work that they're putting together as well. I also wanted to mention, we did hear some comments during public comment about the Michigan Civil Rights Commission meeting. I just wanted to mention that I also sat in on that meeting, and I thought, there was some good information presented there. I did want to respond. There were some comments made at that meeting about financial transparency, particularly that charter schools are just as transparent as traditional public schools. And I can say that in my 14 years on the board, that has not been my experience. So I was excited to hear this and thought that I would do a little research just to confirm that that is in fact the case. And as I suspected, it is not. So I want to give you just an example of some of the stuff that I looked at. I decided to take one district and just compare the traditional school district in Detroit with as many of the charter schools in Detroit that I could find. And I just looked at what was available on their transparency icon that every school is required to have in the state of Michigan. I looked at three primary areas. One was the procurement policy, because state law does require that, and I'll quote here, the board of a school district or board of directors of a public school academy shall adopt written policies governing the procurement of supplies, materials, and equipment. And then it goes on to spell out a whole lot more stuff. And so I could easily find that on Detroit's website. And I'm happy to say I found it on pretty much every other charter school's website as well. They had a procurement policy. Many of them had adopted one from one of their national organizations, which is great. But I will say that when it came to any school managed by National Heritage Academies, there was not a procurement policy on their website. The procurement policy was limited to the following. It is the policy of the board to comply with state and federal law regarding the procurement of supplies, materials, and equipment. The board directs its educational service provider to develop and implement appropriate and lawful practices and procedures for such procurement with board funds. This is not a procurement policy. This is a promise of a procurement policy somewhere that I, as a citizen, do not have access to. So that was one of my first red flags with that. The other is I looked at the check registries. Detroit has their check registry online. A lot of charter schools in Detroit also have their check registries, but only a handful of them were up to date. Many of them were outdated. And then when it came to procurement contracts, the Detroit Public School Community District has not only a list of vendors that they use, but also links to the contracts. I couldn't find a single charter school that had any of that information. So I just wanted to point out that there are still comments being made that that there's not any issue with financial transparency, and I completely disagree with that. And as part of that, I would welcome anyone from one of the for-profit management companies to come and talk to us, especially if someone from National Heritage Academy would like to come talk to us and tell us what their procurement policy is. I think that would be fantastic. I would also welcome anyone from the authorizers of these schools to speak before the board as well. We've invited them in the past. They have never taken us up on this offer. I would love to hear from them about what they think best practices are and how we can help them with those best practices. So that invitation stands, it's out there, and I would appreciate getting that kind of information. That would be great. We know from earlier and from the fact that I'm trying to get through this without crying, that we are losing 2 of our board members. This is their last meeting, and I really regret that we can't be together in person to celebrate you both and your service to Michigan's children. But I want you to know how much I truly appreciate the work that you've both done. And it was great to hear from former board member Richard Ziley. I think it says a lot that we're a board of quote unquote partisans, and yet we don't behave that way. They're not a group of tribes. We act as one, and I really appreciate that. And the fact that he took the time to call in, I think speaks volumes to that. So Lupe, I just wanted to say thank you for your service. You brought a really important perspective to the board, and having served as a teacher and administrator yourself for over 3 decades, you've clearly dedicated your life to public education in Michigan, and the state is better off for it. You've represented the interest of all kids, but particularly really keeping a focus on the west side of the state, English language learners, special education children, those who may not have what others have. You've always kept first and foremost. And I think that you have definitely earned that extra time you're going to get to spend with your granddaughter. So thank you so much for your service. And Michelle, you not only advocate for kids, especially those with special needs, but you've devoted your entire adult life to serving these children. And as I said earlier, I am in awe of you and Eddie and the fact that you have opened your home to so many kids and continue to do so. You always put your own interest aside and put the interests of little ones ahead. I truly appreciate your strength. You're beyond reproach. You live your values every single day, and you're passionate and you don't back down. You're really, really strong, and anyone or any organization that ever thought they could bully you into supporting a position clearly either hasn't met you or doesn't know you, and they have no idea what they're up against. And so I just want to say I have really enjoyed working with you over the last 8 years. You haven't just been a board member, you've been a friend, and we have had some really great times together and have, done some really hard work together. And I appreciate you so much. And I didn't even know, because you're so humble, I didn't know you got that Maim award. And so congratulations on an award well deserved. So we will miss you both. Thank you so much for your service. And then finally, I just want to say happy holidays to everyone. Please stay safe. This Christmas and New Year's will be very different for my family, and I imagine for yours as well. And let's just keep our eye on the prize and look towards 2021, and we can all get back to the world where we get to be in the same room again. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Cassandra.
Thank you, President Albrecht. Report of the State Superintendent will be brief. I want to congratulate Michelle Fecto and Lupe Ramos-Montini again on their 10 years on the State Board of Education. Lupe and Michelle, we will miss your advocacy on the board for children who have less and need more from our schools. Once an advocate for children, always an advocate for children, whether you are on the board or not. We look forward to continuing to draw from your wisdom and to continuing our conversations with you. Michelle, you may or may not recall when we first met. It was actually in Kalamazoo several years ago with Kathy Strauss at Greenwood Elementary School, and we were receiving a state award, and I was totally charmed. I didn't know who was who at the time. and was confronted with this enormous personality in the presence of Kathy Strauss, and then this enormous other personality in the presence of Michelle Fecto. And that was a nice meeting, perhaps back in 2013 or so. We'll miss you. I'm not saying goodbye. I'm just wishing you the very, very best in retirement from the board. Lupe, we will similarly miss you on the board as well, but we're not saying goodbye to you either, because you too have wisdom that you need to continue to share, not simply in Grand Rapids, but with us across the state. And you've been an important voice, not simply for the West Side, but for English language learners, for first generation, for immigrant students, for children whose voices are often very hard to hear in our state, if not more broadly in our country. So we appreciate both of you and appreciate your many, many, many contributions. You can leave the board, but we have your telephone numbers, and it is not stalking to call for advice and counsel. That's a sign of appreciation and respect. I did share this morning that the better we do with our efforts to mitigate the adverse impacts of the pandemic with our mask wearing, our hand washing, our disinfecting, our social distancing, the more our children will be able to be educated in schools where they learn best and where teachers teach best. I'm asking everybody to do their part so that our children can be in schools as much as possible this school year. And I want to wish everyone all the best for a happy and healthy holiday season and New Year. Stay healthy and stay strong. Our next part of the board agenda is the report of the Michigan Teacher of the Year. Mr. Owen Bondano is our 2021 Michigan Teacher of the Year. He will present his report. Mr. Bondano is an English language arts teacher at the Oak Park Freshman Institute in Oak Park Schools. Ms. Barb Houston, Region 4 Teacher of the Year, is joining him today from Saginaw Township Community Schools. She's a third grade teacher at Arrowwood Elementary School. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rice. Good afternoon, board. How are we today? Let me share my slides here real quick. There we go. Got this. Okay. So I have a slightly different setup than usual, so I'm just making sure everything's working. So good afternoon. I'm excited to speak with you. I'm always excited to speak with you guys, and today is no different. And then I'm also excited to present to you when I'm finished Barb Houston, the 2021 Region 4 Michigan Teacher of the Year. So you will hear from her in just a moment. There we go. So I've been, especially last month, I was so encouraged and inspired by what the board talked about when it came to increasing the representation of our teachers in the classroom and better aligning the diversity of the workforce to the diversity of our students. It inspired me a little bit in today's presentation because these conversations have been largely focused on race and gender equality, which are obviously very important to our student body. But I wanted to give a message today that we can't forget about the recruiting and retention of our LGBTQ educators as well when we are talking about the diversity of educators in the state. So thanks to GLSEN, the CDC, and many other sources, we have a lot of data about the victimization of LGBTQ students in schools, and we have data that shows that when we make a concerted effort to support those students, that there's a measurable effect on the outcomes for those students. Recruiting and supporting LGBTQ+ teachers is both not only a worthy goal in and of itself, but it also really is an additional step that we can take to supporting our LGBTQ students in the state. So just like our students of color, our LGBTQ students need to see role models, and they need to see that it's possible to grow up and live a normal life while being queer. Feeling isolated is one of the relatively unique experiences for LGBTQ people. And by that, I mean for most members of marginalized communities, individuals have family members who are a member of that same community and they can go to for support, especially when they're young. But for many LGBTQ people, especially our young people, you may be the only person you know who is, quote unquote, like you. The internet is changing this reality for many students, but LGBTQ youth still need role models. And personally, much of my fear about transitioning when I was a young person was lost when I first met adult trans people. And I saw that they were just normal people with normal lives. And honestly, before I met those adult trans people, I wasn't sure it was even possible to be transgender and to have a normal life. And even once that fear of transition started to go away from me, there were still many people in college who told me that it would be impossible to both be a teacher and be a transgender person. I was told that nobody would want a queer person in front of their students, and that no school would want to hire a queer person either due to their own bias or just to fear of community backlash. In my experience, first as a classroom aide, then as a paraprofessional, and then of course as a teacher, I've always felt relatively alone in my queerness. I felt, of course, anxiety about hiding parts of my identity and about the fear of being fired for who I am. And I felt alone in dealing with some of the unique challenges and situations that come with being an LGBTQ+ teacher. In fact, I have been told directly at this point by multiple people at different areas of administration that they have made decisions in the past not to hire people that they consider visibly queer because they were afraid that those educators may not be safe in their schools. Of course, the solution to this cannot be denying opportunities to queer educators, but rather making all schools places where LGBTQ+ individuals feel welcome. On this slide in the center is an introduction slide that I made for my students when we were community building that explains to my students who I am in sort of 2 minutes or less. And when we shared this with each other in my classrooms, I walked them through all the photos and symbols and logos and such, just to give them a quick impression, 2 minutes or less, like I said, of who Mr. Bondano is, so they know who they're learning from during the school year. And this includes, as you can see, a little heart that shows my identity both as a transgender person and as a bisexual. And surrounding this image is some slides I've taken from my students who are just a few examples of students who went on to include LGBTQ+ identities in their own slides when they shared the next day. So by sharing my own identity, I make the space safer for the students to be who they are. And these students directly benefit from having LGBTQ role models in their lives. But even students who are not LGBTQ benefit from having LGBTQ+ role models. They learn that, like I said, we're just normal people living normal lives. We give them homework and care about them just like every other teacher does. And we know that all students benefit from diversity and that this helps to produce students who are more empathetic, caring, and unbiased as adults. Now, unfortunately, the sense of isolation experienced by so many in the LGBTQ community isn't limited just to the youth. It applies to many LGBTQ adults, professionals, including teachers. And even though the June 2020 U.S. Supreme Court decision, the Bostock versus Clayton County decision holds that employees cannot be discriminated against based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. Those policies are really just a jumping off point. We need more than just policies. They are the first step. So beyond that first step, what we need is authentic top-level support. So this could mean administrators, central offices, local school boards, ISDs, of course, this board, all the way up to MDE itself, to make clear that LGBTQ educators are both welcome and wanted in our Michigan schools. This board has an excellent model anti-bullying policy that includes protecting students from bias-based bullying based on their sexual orientation or gender identity, and these protections also must be extended to staff members. Potential discrimination against LGBTQ+ educators is very complex and multifaceted. It can come from all kinds of directions you don't expect. Of course, we worry about discrimination from administration, from our fellow teachers that would make us be in a hostile working environment. We're also worried about it coming from students, and making it difficult to build those relationships with our students that is so necessary to our work. And of course, we're also worried about it coming from parents, because discrimination from parents can both poison those relationships we build with our students, and it can pressure the administration to capitulate, even when on paper or to your face they are supportive. If there's enough pressure from parents, they can sometimes capitulate that support. So schools need policies and plans in place for how they'll deal with these potential situations before they come up. Allowing people to self-advocate is a crucial step to creating safer and more supportive schools. So just as the policies that were passed by the Board of Education in 2016 provide for the creation and support of gender and sexuality alliances, aka GSAs, for students, adult LGBTQ+ educators also need access to these kinds of resources and affinity groups as spaces where they can reduce their own isolation and help improve their own schools. And that guidance that I've referred to already, the 2016 guidance from the board, it emphasizes the importance on training teachers for how they support LGBTQ+ students. And I believe these trainings should also include LGBTQ+ educators and how their coworkers can support and include them in the climate and culture of their school. And lastly, as the board is thinking about diversifying the recruitment and retention of teachers in Michigan, I simply encourage you to include LGBTQ+ educators in those efforts. One thing this might include is developing systems for tracking these populations of educators, since we know it's hard to change what we don't measure. It's my hope, truly, that by being an out visible queer educator in my role as Michigan Teacher of the Year, that I can help other queer educators see that they are valuable and wanted in this profession. So first of all, thank you for everything the board has already done for LGBTQ+ students. You have made some bold moves in the past that have been ahead of the curve in many ways. And I hope that today I've just given you some useful thoughts and considerations regarding our LGBTQ+ educators. And after we hear from Ms. Houston, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about this topic. So with that being said, I would like to introduce to you Barb Houston, the Region 4 Michigan Teacher of the Year.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am Barb Houston, your Region 4 Teacher of the Year. I teach 3rd grade at Arrowwood Elementary for Saginaw Township Community Schools. Next slide, Owen. This is my joy. This is my family. My husband David and I have been married for 35 years. We have 3 daughters. Danielle is a high school English teacher for Saginaw Township Community Schools as well. She and her husband Luke have 3 of our granddaughters. Emerson is 8, Adeline is 5, and Lillian is 2.5. Our second daughter, Lauren, is a literacy specialist for Ionia Public Schools. And she and her husband, Jordan, have our grandson, Mason, who is 2.5, and our new twins, Aubrey and Bennett, who are now 5 months old. And then we have our Madison. She came a little bit later. She is our youngest. She is a junior at Heritage High School. She plans to attend University of Michigan and go into nursing because she thinks there's far too many educators in this family. Okay, next slide. So I believe this quote with all that I am as a teacher. 10 years ago, our district had adopted a new basal reading series and was focusing a lot of energy, and rightly so, on RTI. But as a reading workshop teacher, I was desperately searching for research on the importance of keeping choice reading for kids, and I came across a book, Donalyn Miller's book, The Book Whisperer, and it was exactly what I needed. My friend Jim Bailey, who is the principal at Hemmeter Elementary School, and I organized a professional book club for our district, and together we became Donalyn Miller groupies. This picture was taken at Nerd Camp a couple of summers ago, and as a district, we continue to advocate for independent choice reading time. Next slide. Literacy is one of my passions, and establishing the environment is more than decorating a room. It's a place where my kids share their reading lives. We always have a plan and not only share what we're presently reading, but our plans for what's up next. We read books individually in book clubs, as well as listen to books together as a class. We do book talks, we recommend titles to one another, and we share our opinions of books that we've read. Next slide. I am a member of Book Posse. We are a professional reading group on Twitter. Authors and illustrators, publishers send us ARCs, those advanced reading copies, for us to preview and to start getting readers excited about the upcoming titles. It has provided a very authentic way for my third graders to participate in the reading world. We're able to build those relationships with those authors and illustrators. My class gets very excited reading books that aren't even in stores yet. They write reviews and then I tweet them out on their behalf. It's opened the doors to author visits. In the middle, you'll see on the computer, that's Cheryl Joseph. She's the author of the Botanic Hill Detective Series, and she surprised my virtual book club that was taking place last May. Lindsay Moore is author and illustrator of Sea Bear. She adopted my classroom under the program Kids Need Mentors, and we webcasted multiple times with her, and she shared real life experiences and advice for my readers and writers. And as you can see, friending authors and illustrators makes for lots of gifts. Next slide. My goal is to keep reading volume high, and sometimes that takes thinking out of the box. So opportunities like book tasting is a way to sample new genres or series that I would like my kids to try. Chat and Choose are monthly activities where we spread out the picnic blankets and the kids bring a stack of books to talk about and to recommend to one another. Parents sign up to provide the snack and the drinks. March Madness is probably one of my favorite activities. Starting the first day of school, I read picture books to my kids every morning. And in March, the kids will pick their favorites of the 110 books that we've read so far. And we create the Sweet 16. The most fun of March Madness is the day that we draw to seed the books, and the groans are hilarious when like two books get pitted against one another. But then throughout the month, the kids will revisit those picture books and then they vote to see who moves across the bracket. Pajama Day in front of the fire is always a favorite. Sometimes to keep motivation high, we just need to make some forts and climb under it and read our favorite books. And sometimes we just even need to turn off all the lights and read by flashlight. Next one. Arrowwood used to be a K-5 elementary school, and we had a mentor reading program where the 5th mentored the 2nd graders, the 4th graders mentored the 1st, and then the 3rd graders supported the kindergarten. We were a district that consolidated schools, and we ended up establishing K-2 schools and 3-5 buildings. And when we consolidated and Arrowwood became a 3-5 building, we were no longer able to do that mentoring. But luckily, the Community of Education preschool program housed their preschool at Arrowwood. So once a week, one of my 3rd graders will go down and they will read aloud a picture book to the class. And this is an authentic way for them to practice their fluency and then present their reading. And then every 6 to 8 weeks, I will take my entire class down and we read with our partners. Another thing that is motivating to my leaders is the opportunity to organize their own book clubs. My students will choose the books, they will advertise the book club, and then they will organize how often they will meet and discuss. And it's very, very little hands-on by me. Okay, next one. Goal setting is very important in my classroom, and when we meet those goals, we need to celebrate. So each student has an individual reading goal, and when those goals are met, they get to display that I'm an avid reader in Mrs. Houston's class yard sign in their yard for a couple of days. Meeting their 40 book challenge goal gets them lunch with Mrs. Houston. Those two readers in the upper right hand corner, they actually read 100 books each, and we celebrated with a date night to dinner and to Barnes & Noble. To get a free book, because my kids know that's my favorite date night. I go out to dinner with Mr. Houston and then we shop around Barnes & Noble. So we celebrated that way. And then the Battle of the Books is a program where students read from a list of 20 or more books and then they compete game show style. And this group took first place amongst a dozen teams at Arrowwood, which were grades 3 through 5. So I was pretty proud of that. So as you can see, I'm not only building literacy lives, but we make memories in room 310 as well. Okay, last. So Thanks for your support. Owen, I want to thank you as well for all of your support and just tell you how proud I am to be one of your colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Bondano, Ms. Houston. Board members, any questions or comments? We have in the chat Lupe Ramos Montini saying 2 fantastic presentations, and President Aldrich saying thank you. Anything else?
I will just say thank you, and it's good to have 2 months in a row, Mr. Bondano, friends and teachers from the Saginaw area. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being excellent and great educators for our children.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Ms. Fecto, and then Ms. Ramos Montini.
Yes, yes, they were both wonderful presentations. I loved your passion around literacy. I have one daughter who's very introverted, but it really helped her to shine when she won Battle of the Books 2 years in a row, and she took that with her into her adulthood. That gave her strength to do a lot of things that a quiet little girl might not have seen or others have seen in herself. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing and how important it is to students. And Owen, as the mother of 2 LGBT, I'm sorry, I'm going to say LGBT plus. I like that. So not to say all of the letters. And one of them who just married her wife this summer and is teaching for the first time. I use you as a role model for her. And, you know, she's pretty outspoken. I don't know where she gets it from, but she's not, but it's a struggle, even when you're a strong personality, to deal with all those issues that come at you. And so you are a role model. You're a role model for my family. And I am so glad you are here to bring light to these issues and how they affect so many people. So thank you, and keep it up.
Thank you, Ms. Fecto. Ms. Ramos Montini.
Well, you know, despite the pandemic, both of these teachers are doing one fantastic job to elevate teachers throughout the state. It was a testimony from you about LGBT plus and transgender. We learned something today, and so continue being that advocate for that segment of the teacher population. As I said previously in the meeting, teachers are under a lot of stress these days for so many reasons, but this would add to their struggles, being accepted and treated like you said, I'm just an ordinary person. So thank you for that. And my granddaughter was having problems reading early on, and of course we were concerned. But now she's in 6th grade, 11 years old, and she can read. And it was programs such as the one that you described that got her interested in reading. And so, you know, both of you presented very good presentations, very relevant presentations. And so this will be my last time from this chair. I'm pretending I'm there at the Hana building from this chair to congratulate you. But I am finishing my term only. I'm not finishing my term as an advocate for education. So you'll hear from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos Montini. Dr. Pritchett wrote very helpful information from both teachers. Would you like to share verbally?
I just want to personally thank both of you. I found your presentations inspiring, and as Lupe already mentioned, in the middle of the pandemic, good things are happening. and you're impacting children and students across the state, and that's what's important. So thank you very much. It was very informative.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. And Dr. Pugh, unsurprisingly, got 2 oars in the water. She got the verbal oar in the water and the written oar in the water. She said, "Thank you, Mr. Bondano. Love your passion and promotion of diversity. We have great teacher leaders in the state. We appreciate them. We appreciate your presentations this afternoon. Thank you very much. Happy holidays to both of you." Board, we are on to the next agenda item. It's the discussion on the amendment of State Board of Education bylaws. Dr. Ulbrich will lead the discussion. Dr. Ulbrich.
Thank you. So the pandemic has shown a light on a number of issues, one of which directly affects the State Board of Education. And while we were fortunate that the need to cancel or postpone a meeting had not happened previously, the reality is emergencies do happen, and we should have a clear procedure on what needs to happen in the case of a need to postpone or to cancel a meeting. So per our previous discussions, I am suggesting an amendment to the bylaws. And per our bylaws, in order for us to pass an amendment, it has to be provided in writing for one meeting, and then at the next meeting, we would vote on the language. So I have provided language to the board that reads, that would be added at the end of section 1A, and reads as follows. Given an appropriate reason and with the concurrence of the State Board of Education president, the chairperson may cancel a regularly scheduled meeting. Appropriate reasons may include but are not limited to exigent circumstances related to health, safety, weather, or other events affecting the state or the Lansing area. So again, in order for us to be able to make these bylaw changes, section 6 of the State Board of Education bylaw states that it may be amended in accordance with the following procedure. The proposed amendments shall be submitted in writing and shall lay on the table between the meeting at which they are submitted and the next duly constituted meeting at which time such amendments must be acted upon. The proposed amendments shall require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes for approval. In accordance with the above mentioned procedure, the amendment to the State Board of Education bylaws are being presented to you at this meeting and will be presented for board approval on January 12th, 2021.
Board members, any questions or comments on this?
Yeah, I do.
Mr. McMillan.
I understand. I understand the need for this, or actually the potential need. Dr. Rice, I was wondering. I can't recall, like local school boards. How do they? Were you ever at a local school board where they canceled a meeting? And what was the reason? I'm just wondering if, and I'd like for our legal counsel to check and make sure that we can do this, because I'm not sure we're delegating as a body to the chair, something that's not ministerial, but.
So I can actually answer the second part of that.
Okay.
We did work with the Attorney General's office on this language. So that's answers your second part, but your first part, Dr. Rice can answer.
Well, I guess I just was wondering, I would understand like if it's something that is objective and not subjective. I just didn't know, like if Lansing closes its roads down, then that's very objective. It's either closed or they're not. And so, that would be something. If there's a state of emergency, that's objective, if it was done by law, following the law at least. So I guess those are objective, but then as far as subjective, I just didn't know, if you've seen it where it's just very subjective. I don't know. At a local board meeting, Dr. Rice, I didn't know if you.
Sure. So the best example is snow. That periodically in the winter you get a bad storm. You've canceled school, or you've canceled school that day, and your board meeting is that night, or your board meeting is that night and you've already canceled school for the next day. It's a judgment call about whether you cancel school or not. I mean, the number of inches that are on the ground is established. What's expected is a guess, and it's a subjective call as to whether to have the meeting or not.
Actually, that would be objective because nobody on the board is making that decision. The superintendent objectively decided to do it the day of, or the morning, or to close school. So have you seen it where the president of a board, somebody on the board, just one of the board members, not a majority, obviously you can't make decisions outside of a board meeting. But I mean, have you seen it where one person on the board decides to cancel a meeting? I don't think that would be what that's not a snow day.
I mean, typically what happens at a local school district level is a superintendent calls the board president and says, look, there are 3 inches of snow on the ground and they're predicting 9 by 7 p.m. It doesn't look like a good time to have a board meeting. And the board president says, you're right. And the meeting gets canceled.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty pro forma. It's not given to an enormous amount of analysis. Now, the analysis around whether you have school is a different story.
Well, yeah. The one thing that I had heard somebody talk about, because when this occurred a few months ago, somebody said to me, and I'm not saying this would happen, but let's say the superintendent, knew that there was a majority of the board that was going to convene and fire him or her. And he just kept delaying the meeting so that never occurred. I guess now you would at least have to have the president, who presumably would have the support of a majority of the board. So I guess that's just an example, but I'm saying, or some vote that, the president and the chairman does not want to occur. I mean, could that, and could they, I guess it just would, that's probably not something that would occur, but I just trying to think, I always try to think of all the unintended consequences. I've seen way too many things be approved and nobody hadn't thought of some of the unintended consequences. So that's, yeah.
And the only thing I'd say, Mr. McMillan, is simply that, I've had colleagues of mine who say that they love being a superintendent, but they don't like working for a board. And my response to that is they go hand in glove. They are inextricably bound one to the other, and bound to those two is board meetings, our board meetings. You have to have board meetings, whether you like them or not, whether you like a given agenda item or not. You have to slog through it. That's just what it is. And this is not an effort to avoid.
No, I know.
Meetings.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, we've worked together for 1.5 years. I actually enjoy the engagement with the board. Whether I should is a different story, but I do. Other comments or questions, fears or phobias? Okay, very good. We will be back. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ms. Vecto.
Is there any consideration for just making it an online meeting? Would that allow you to, no, can't do that? You have to have special.
We cannot do that without the legislature. Actually, the legislature has to continue allowing us to do it now. And so without that, we cannot meet virtually, which is one of the reasons that we ended up in that issue in October. Was we were stuck between the end of the governor's
Supreme Court calling it illegal.
Was the end of the governor's ability to have the EO versus the legislature hadn't yet acted on allowing for virtual meetings.
Thank you.
Right. So, and just an update legislatively, and we're going to have our legislative update soon enough. But on this particular topic, the ability to have virtual meetings, as our president noted, is expiring. It was a 3-month extension by the state legislature in October. It goes through the end of the calendar year, if not extended, into next year. We do not have that ability moving into January. I might note that I just got a text that the House canceled its session and its hearings this week due to COVID-19. It does prompt the question, you know, what precisely they are struggling with at this moment, but there's no question but that it's a perilous moment across the state and across the country, and you know, the recent hearing may or may not have added to that condition. Any other reflections on this topic? Hearing none, we will move to the next. Thank you very much, President Ulbrich, board members. The next item on today's agenda is the approval of revised model anti-bullying policy. The model anti-bullying policy has been updated to reflect current practices aligned to law. A period for public comment ended December 1st, 2020. Responses have been reviewed and incorporated as appropriate. The board is being asked to approve the policy during today's meeting. Our presenters will be Mr. Kyle Garant, Deputy Superintendent for Finance and Operations, Dr. Diane Golzinski, Director of Health and Nutrition Services. There will be a PowerPoint presentation. What I'd like to do is two things before we begin the presentation. One, could I have a motion to approve the policy as amended?
So moved.
So I've got a motion and a second, and then just one note that just as we wanted to end this calendar year with a discussion about potential flexibility in diploma opportunities for children with special needs, in honor of Ms. Fecto's term on the board, we wanted to honor Ms. Lupe Ramos Montini's term on the board by moving this back in front of the board. She has raised this issue on a number of occasions in her board work, and we felt that this was a fitting topic to discuss and perhaps finalize at her last board meeting. So with that said, Mr. Garant and Dr. Golzinski, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rice, and thank you, board, for having us back this month. As Dr. Rice mentioned, there was a period of public comment that Diane will walk through in the presentation to talk about what those comments were and how they were incorporated into the revised policy that we shared with you last month. There were a total of 11 comments total in that public comment window. And just as a reminder, in Dr. Rice's board brief this past Friday, you received the full text of the public comments. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Golzinski.
All right. Hello, everyone. Happy December to you. As Kyle said, we are talking about the anti-bullying policy. This is a model policy, and we have our revisions ready to share with you. So as we have said in the past, this policy was first passed by our State Board of Education in 2001, with revisions in 2006 and 2010. There have not been updates or revisions to the policy since that time. The updates for 2020 include updated terminology and framework, including the whole school, whole community, whole child model and multi-tiered systems of supports. More prominent inclusion of staff, coaches, and volunteers in this model policy. We are assuring alignment with changes in the law, such as the MAT Safe School law that was passed in 2011. Provide examples of staff training around prevention of bullying and added guiding questions for investigations as they are needed at the local level. So you will remember that we presented to you early, prior to the pandemic, We put this out for public comment. We came back to you again in November. We put it back out for public comment again, just to be sure we had hit everyone. When we sent it out in November, we made sure that we sent it through NDE's Thursday communications that goes to all superintendents in the state, the Michigan Education Alliance, our Confederation of Michigan Tribal Education Directors, our School Health Coordinators Association, our School Nurses Association, Parent Action for Healthy Kids, as well as our interagency school health team that we work on in partnership with the Department of Health and Human Services. It was open for 2 weeks and closed on December 1st. We were able to receive 11 responses in that time. The demographics of those responses include 1 school staff, 5 administrators, a school board member, 2 parents, and 2 who identified as other. In those public comments, we were told that removing the word reasonable from the policy was, not to be silly, but was reasonable. They were approving of that change. They appreciated the inclusion of the whole school, whole community, whole child language. They supported inclusion of the 7 factors that were outlined in law. They felt the revisions made the document more clear, more to the point, and more relevant, and that the document was well written. The suggested changes from those 11 comments, one person felt that the definition of the policy needed to reflect the Center for Disease Control definition, when in fact the definition that we chose reflects Michigan law. So we were very careful that we were reflecting Michigan law and not a national organization such as CDC. We did have a conflicting comment where one person felt the word reasonable should not have been removed. We had one person who wanted repeated added to the bullying definition, but again, what we included in this model policy was what is in Michigan law, and so we did not feel that it was appropriate to veer from that, and that we wanted the policy to one person wanted the policy to require research and evidence-based training, so we did make those changes. Some of the suggested changes fell to local control and out of the purview of a model policy that is adapted and provided to our state through the State Board of Education. There were some minor changes to language that we went ahead and made from those public comments, and there were conflicting comments on whether or not staff should be included in this model policy. So with that, what questions do you have for us?
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Garant and Dr. Golzinski. We have a comment from Ms. Snyder.
Sorry, my cat really wants to be involved in this. I just want to say I'm happy that you kept the staff as a important stakeholder in bullying. Just we're all involved in that. We all have to do our part, if you will, in keeping our environment safe for everybody to communicate and to be engaged. This is a big issue for me. I don't share personal stories. I think that those stories that I have that might be considered personal are for those people to share, but it's very near and dear to my heart that we continue to develop and carve out an environment and space where everybody can come to the table and feel like they can share without being bullied in return, without being really bullied. It encompasses much of how we've come to do political life and all other walks of life that we have to just simply do better. So even though I would say the policy that we write will need to probably be revisited and isn't always perfect, and I don't necessarily agree with all platform considerations that come, I think the point of it is very helpful as we move forward and try to make sure that every kid has access to education in Michigan. So thank you for this work, and Loopy, I know this is very important to you, so thank you for encouraging this as well.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Mr. McMillan, a question?
Well, I guess I am interested as to why reasonably. So I'm looking at the definition of bullying or harassment. It's a written, verbal, physical act that is reasonably perceived as being dehumanizing, intimidating, hostile, humiliating, threatening, or otherwise likely to invoke fear or physical harm or emotional distress. So taking out the word, well, I guess I'm curious, why is reasonably removed? There and in other places, but let's just start with there. Why is that? Why remove reasonably?
Sure. So upon reflection, we felt that reasonable was a word that could be perceived differently by different people. And we felt it was important to take out something that might cause additional confusion. So we had positive comments saying they were happy with that choice, and one person who said that they would have preferred we did not remove it. But we did make the decision, certainly, that we felt it was important to take out any ambiguity.
Okay, but so what this means, though, is that that the person that is, so somebody can be accused of bullying, and it might not, and all it has to occur for somebody to be accused is somebody else saying that that action or that written thing made me feel humiliated or threatened. Whether or not a reasonable person feels that that's correct, I mean, it could be something that is obviously not humiliating or threatening, but just because that person feels that way, then there's going to be a person that could get in trouble because of that. Is that right?
I think it was that we wanted to really be sure we took the subjectivity out of it.
Well, yeah, but by taking that out of it, you've now made it so that a person could be accused of anything and be guilty of anything just because somebody else feels a certain way, whether it's reasonable or not, right?
But I think your definition of reasonable and my definition of reasonable might be different.
Right. Well, that's true. So then all of a sudden the person who is accusing somebody of bullying, it's their definition that we're going to take now. It's not, there's no justice here. There's no discussion as whether the bullying actually occurred or not. The person that is making the accusation gets to be the judge and the jury by themselves. They get to decide what is how they're perceived, and if it's hostile, whether it is or not, or whether it is to a reasonable person is now irrelevant. It's just going to be, I mean, you know, let's say some girls on a girls basketball team doesn't like that a person that is born a guy now is claiming to be a girl and wants to play on the team, and they are trying to protest it and try to get the policy changed. That could be viewed as intimidating, hostile, humiliating. So now their right to try to oppose it is now something that's silenced.
Tom, if I could jump in real quick. I mean, I think the examples that you've outlined are all examples that could have happened with the term reasonable in the policy as well. I mean, what you're articulating is the process and the procedures that would happen at a local level based on a district's policy and how they would investigate, you know, any claims in any direction. So again, I think our rationale for taking out reasonable was because we had comments from a whole host of groups, local districts, law firms that represent school districts, that reasonable is a subjective term and causes confusion at the local level when it does come to investigating claims of bullying.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, that doesn't make any sense, Kyle, because now you're saying that we're suggesting this is a policy that we want school districts to adopt. And you're saying that during the investigation, is that when reasonableness is going to be able to be injected? Or again, is the accuser simply going to get this person in trouble just because of how they perceive an action is done, whether it's reasonable or not? I mean, you're kind of saying that there's going to be subjectivity in how it's all meted out, Well, okay, so there's so let's acknowledge that there's going to be subjectivity in here, but I just think making the accuser the one who decides whether somebody is guilty or not, just because of whether they perceive something one way or another, that's just blatantly wrong.
Yeah, and I don't think
that this is right.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the intent of the policy draft. President Aldrich?
Well, I was just going to say that I think that bullet point 1, which had the word reasonably, is only one of 6 that is part of the definition moving forward. So you have to satisfy all of these bullet points, not just the first one. So it also includes who it's directed at, how it's conveyed, that it substantially interferes with educational opportunities, it adversely affects the ability of the student to participate or benefit from the school district's educational programs, and it's based on distinguishing actual or perceived distinguishing characteristics. So it's not simply just the first bullet point, it's a number of bullet points that add up to whether or not it fits the definition. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Thank you, President Aldrich. Ms. Ramos-Montini.
Okay, well, yeah, I thank you, Cassandra, for that, because
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. My comment, that was not my comment. That was actually.
No, for the clarification of, because that's what I was going to say. There's a process. It's just not, I'm going to accuse Cassandra of harassing me. There's a process that the personnel are going to take effect and then come to the determination if it's harassment or bullying. And so I think for me, it's clear. But I also wanted to point out the word staff. Now, it's not just the bullying and harassing doesn't occur only with a student to a student. It could occur from a teacher to a student, from a student to a teacher, from an administrator to a teacher, etc., etc. So there's many levels in the educational world that bullying and harassment can occur. And so I am very comfortable with the word staff being part of the revised policy, because we are going to include everyone, not just hold the students accountable for bullying and harassing and harassment. It's going to be the whole educational family of any particular school district or any particular building.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos-Montini. I concur in that regard. President Aldrich, back to you.
Thank you. So what my original comment was going to be was to echo Nikki and now Lupe's comments about including staff, because we know that the school culture is not just a reflection of the students in the school, but also the staff and the teachers as well. I also wanted to point out the fact that there are federal regulations like Title IX that do not just apply to student-on-student behavior, but actually faculty, teacher, staff behavior towards students as well. And so this complies with federal regulations. And in conversations that I've had in the past with the Office of Civil Rights, they've even gone so far as to suggest that they would like to see staff on staff be included in Title IX. Now, I don't think they ever got that far, but it's certainly a possibility, and I know it's something that they were looking at one point. So I support keeping staff in the document.
And of course we did as well. That came out of the draft work. And just a note about that, it would be consistent with law, as President Aldrich points out, and also consistent with current collective bargaining agreements in the districts as well. Ms. Fecto, a question?
So, my question is, what is the due process mechanism that goes along with this? And sort of getting at what Tom's saying, my role as a union rep when we have harassment or bullying issues is both sides feel often they are aggrieved, you know, somebody feels bullied and they act out, then they're the bully, bullying the bully. So I'm just wondering, what is the, any prescribed or recommended ways to investigate to make sure that, you know, that things are fair, and, you know, there's an appeal process if someone feels treated unfairly.
Mr. Garant or Dr. Golzinski?
Go ahead, Diane. Do you have anything to add, or I can?
Yep. I was just going to say, Ms. Fecto, that on page 4, there are suggested questions, page 4 of the model policy. I apologize, that should have been more specific. Suggested investigation questions and factors for determining consequences that were specific to exactly what you were just mentioning around due process and assuring that we are taking other considerations into account when addressing an accusation of bullying. Kyle, what did I miss?
No, I was just going to reiterate that Dr. Rice had mentioned the addition on the bottom of page 3 around when it involves staff, that it would be in accordance with law and local collective bargaining agreement. So again, kind of referring back to district policies and procedures as it relates to due process for staff.
So if I could follow up, so if it's a student-on-student situation, it would just be up to the administrator to ask these questions, I guess appeal to the school board if they felt that the outcome was not just. Is that the process?
Well, the process, you would walk it up in a local school district. So initially this would be a classroom issue, and then it might walk up to the assistant principal or the principal, depending upon how big the school was and the structure of the administration. And if it weren't addressed to the satisfaction of the people involved, it might walk up into central administration. And from there, you always have the ability, if need be, to take it outside of a school district. But I mean, typically, the vast majority of these issues get handled at the local school level, and if need be, then into central administration.
And one last question. So
yes.
if it's going to lead to an expulsion or a suspension, so then the rules around expulsion and suspension, which focuses on restorative justice and, you know, those kinds of things would come into play.
They would.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I
concerns? Do. Yeah, Mr. McMillan.
So I'm looking at these 6 bullet points for both bullying and harassment, and so reasonably is in both at the beginning. So directed at 1 or more students. Okay, that obviously would have to be at 1 or more. Conveyed through physical, verbal, or technological. Okay, that's going to happen, or else we're not dealing with anything. But then these next 3, substantially interferes with educational opportunities, benefits, programs. Who determines that? Is that the student determining whether it substantially interferes, or is there going to be subjectively somebody determining that?
That would be
Dr. Golzinski. Yes.
Yeah, that would be defined at the local level by the local district.
But is it objective or subjective? Is it up to the student to decide whether they're okay? So it could be up to the student to decide whether they're substantially being interfered with.
Well, the student is going to raise the issue in some way, shape, or form, yes, but ultimately it's going to be the adults in the school who investigate and attempt to mediate, who are going to make some determination of whether there is an objective claim of bullying. The reality is that 2 different people can see an incident in very different ways, and they can see a pattern of incidents in different ways. And to the extent that it is in fact not bullying, there ought to be an opportunity to sit down and do an alternative dispute resolution, mediate the situation, and create a situation where children feel comfortable in that space and don't feel bullied or harassed. They ought not to feel imposed upon and fearful in school. So I think that to your point, the child raises the issue, but it's ultimately the adults in the district who are responsible for the investigation of the issue and for the determination of whether or not these criteria have been met. I might also point out that this is a model policy, and it is for a local school district to adopt in whole, in part, or not at all, as the district chooses. I might also point out that a local school district has a responsibility by law to establish an anti-bullying policy, but does not have a responsibility by law to adopt our model anti-bullying policy. So just a few reflections.
Yeah, I understand that, but then the fifth bullet point takes out reasonable again, so it's up to the student to decide whether they were in fear of harm or emotional distress. I guess I have a real problem removing reasonable and reasonably. Kyle, you said lawyers said this is a problem. Can you give an example of how it became a problem? Was there, yeah, I mean, if you heard from lawyers, what did they say was the problem with having reasonable in there and reasonably?
Sure, I think it boils down to what we've discussed, or it's been part of this conversation today is my perception, or if I'm an administrator, if I'm the assistant principal or the principal, my definition of reasonable may not be in line or may not be the same as another adult's definition of reasonable who may be involved. So if I, as the teacher, or if I'm the teacher in the classroom, a student comes to me and says, hey, I feel so-and-so is bullying me by doing X, Y, and Z. The teacher may perceive that and has seen the behavior and may perceive that as a bullying incident, but then the administrator might see the very exact same situation and not deem that as a reasonable case of bullying. And so that was the intent to which we wanted to eliminate that word from the policy, so that way if districts adopted it in its whole form, that we weren't adding to confusion when it came to investigating bullying at a local level.
Yeah, but then the third bullet point or the fourth and the sixth are going to be subjectively determined by adults also. So why couldn't the first bullet point be subjectively determined by adults as well? I mean, if this became an issue, then, you're saying that the other five were met. It was just this, so the idea that, well, don't worry about taking reasonable or reasonably out because we got 5 other bullet points, but apparently things hinged on this. So the other 5, could have been met, but still we're going to have somebody it'll be the person accusing is going to be the one that determines whether bullying has occurred or not whether it was reasonable or not. Just they get to decide. They're the judge and the jury. So
actually, if I could, Mr. McMillan, the reality is that there are investigations of these issues by school staff, and they make determinations about the validity of the claim or claims, and then they make determinations about what steps need to be done if the claims are perceived by staff to have some merit. So the idea that this is only seen through the student lens is not accurate. They're seen through both student lens and staff lens as well. I mean, as a local school superintendent, this is a regular issue. And staff will say, look, this is how we investigated. We require them to document their investigation. They are required to document the bullying, document the investigation, document the consequences, if any, because sometimes a child says, look, I feel bullied. And in fact, the child was bothered, right? So you pull my hair on the playground. That's not good. I'm not condoning it, but it doesn't rise to the level of bullying. There's no persistence to it. It's wrong. You shouldn't have done it. It shouldn't happen again, but it doesn't rise to the level of bullying. Someone needs to shut it down so it doesn't happen again, so that it doesn't become bullying. But it's an instance of bothering. It's an instance of inappropriate behavior. It's addressed by the staff member who makes a determination. Look, this is something that needs to be addressed, but it's not an instance of bullying. So it always goes through a staff lens as well as a student lens as well.
Well, I mean, I don't want to belabor it. Obviously, there's a majority of the board that's okay with it. I just am not comfortable with this removing reasonable. But thank you.
Fair enough. I would just argue that the removal of the word doesn't mean that we remove reasonableness. That reasonableness doesn't go out with the.
Well, it does to some degree. It does at least to some degree. It does, obviously.
Well, one can make the argument. One could also make the argument that there's a redundancy to it. I think that the reasonableness comes through the staff lens, in part, and through the staff investigation. And sometimes that investigation extends beyond the school. So sometimes that investigation has to go beyond a school level to proper legal authorities for review. And again, it's another adult lens on the situation. It's not simply a student lens, it's an adult lens. But importantly, we take children's concerns seriously, that we don't brush them under the rug. We review all concerns of bullying. We investigate them all. There's a requirement to determine what those consequences are, to document those consequences. In some cases, you bring the parties together and you mediate the situation through some form of alternative to dispute resolution, conflict resolution, peer mediation. Sometimes you have, if you have a larger issue, you might have peace circles where you've got a group going at another group. Sometimes you involve people who are professionals in this. It's a very, very involved issue. It is not simply accepting one child's word over another. It is far more involved, far more complicated than that, and staff are integrally involved in the investigation of allegations of bullying at school districts across the state. Board members, any other questions or comments? If not, Marilyn, if you would be kind enough to take a roll call vote, please.
Yes. Fecto?
Yes.
McMillan?
No.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Ramos Montini? Ramos Montini?
Yes.
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Tilly? 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 Okay, I'll mark that absent. Albridge?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. Next item on today's agenda is the approval of request to change the name of Traverse Bay Area Intermediate School District to Northwest Education Services. Section 380.604 of the revised school code requires that an intermediate school district board of education obtain the approval of the State Board of Education prior to adopting a distinctive name. The Traverse Bay Area Intermediate School District Board of Education voted recently to rename the Intermediate School District Northwest Education Services. An approval from the State Board of Education is being requested during today's meeting. Backed by popular demand is Mr. Kyle Garant, our Deputy Superintendent for Finance and Operations, to answer any questions on this riveting topic that you may have.
Well, I have a question.
Okay. Well, why don't we? I tell you what. Why don't we? Let's get a motion and a second, if we could, before we. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Mr. McMillan, to you for the question.
Kyle, why are they doing this? And is there any other intermediate school district that doesn't want to identify themselves as a school district?
Well, Tom, this is a good question. Talking with Superintendent Ciac, the ISD superintendent, I mean, the genesis of this bore out of their strategic planning that they, with their communities and with their constituent districts, that started back in 2018. And part of the feedback that they received from their constituent districts and community members was Traverse Bay Area ISD really calls out only one of the 5 counties that the ISD serves. So the ISD serves Antrim, Benzie, Grand Traverse, Kalkaska, and Lenawee counties. And there's 16 public school districts and 7 public school academies in those counties. And so it really bore out of the fact that they wanted their name to be more reflective of the community and the members that they serve in their region, and to be more inclusive, thus the Northwest Education Services name. And the genesis or the creation of that name took place over a number of months with community input and feedback and surveying and focus groups on identifying a name that better reflected the community that the ISD serves.
Yeah, but okay. Couldn't they have just said Northwest Intermediate School District?
I guess that would be an option for them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, it's a public body. It's not, I know that it's different how they decide who's on the boards, but they are open meetings, right? Or
Yes.
ISDs.
They are open meetings, yes.
Are there any, are you aware, is anybody aware of an ISD that doesn't have the word intermediate school district in their name?
There are, in fact, a number that don't have intermediate school district in their names. For example, Alpena, Montmorency, and Alcona Ed Services District.
Okay.
Berry
Okay,
region.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I thought this was unique. Thank you.
No, it is unique for my term. It is not unique. I actually pulled the list when I got the request because I had the same question that you did, Mr. McMillan. I mean, do we really want 56 ISDs with 56 unique names?
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that most of them are either ISD or RISA, but there are a number that have chosen some variation of the two. For example, Claire Gladwin is Regional Education Service District, not agency, but district. So they decided to munge the two together. That's a technical term.
Okay.
To create that. So it's, yeah.
I just didn't know if it was a way to market so that they get a millage passed easier, or if they're called services, or are they trying to hide the fact that they're, school district? I don't know. Okay. Thanks.
I think you've got a number of ISDs which have services in the name.
Okay.
Because a lot of the old ISDs became RISAs, so they embedded the S in their name. Why they did it, I can't speak. I would imagine that it would be, to Mr. Garant's point, a local or a regional decision by local or regional decision.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments by board members? Hearing none, Ms. Schneider, if you would be kind enough to take the vote.
Jecto?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes. Yes.
Amos Montini?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Tilly,
Yes.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Unanimous approval.
Thank you. The next item on today's agenda is the state and federal legislative update. Ms. Lupe Ramos Montini, the chairperson of the State Board of Education Legislative Committee, will begin this presentation. And then I believe we'll turn it over at some point. Ms. Ramos Montini.
Okay, there we go. Okay, well, I want to thank you, Cassandra, for appointing me as the chairperson for this committee. It has been a great journey for 2 years. We were able to very well coalesce and work together to the point that we knew exactly when the meetings were going to be, what we planned for our agenda. Everybody was involved, and it was a very functional committee. So I was extremely honored to serve as the chairperson, and Dr. Judy Pritchard was the co-chair. The Honorable Nikki Snyder was one of the members, and then we had a fantastic group of members of the Michigan Department of Education as our liaisons: Marty Eckley, Caroline Litham, Stephen DeGros, Marilyn Schneider, and then our special guest, Dr. Michael Rice. We met on Thursday, November the 24th at 1 p.m. And you can put it up if you like, Marty, because then we have the mission statement. I wanted to go over some of these things. And I think that we as a committee were able to meet all these goals and follow our mission statement very well. So today we have a statement that Dr. Judy Pritchard will read, but I'm going to pass it to Marty right now, and he will start discussing the lame duck agenda that, well, he'll tell you more. So Marty, please take over.
Thank you, Lupe. As you all know, we are chin deep into the lame duck session. As Dr. Rice mentioned earlier, the House and Senate were scheduled to be in session at least one day this week for the next 2 weeks. The House Speaker canceled session for this week, so it makes it that much more difficult to pass legislation from one house to the other. If they're only planning to meet and vote one day this week and next week, it makes it difficult to pass first house bills into the second house and back. So they will have to do some creative bill passage to get those that legislation back and forth. So I know that there were 3 bills, and we'll get into the statement that was requested here. I'll let Dr. Pritchett get into that, but there are basically 3 education-related bills that are in action that you might be interested in. One, of course, is one that, well, a couple of them that Dr. Rice mentioned earlier, House Bill 4342, which would allow substitute teachers, which would allow support staff members to be substitute teachers and get their permits. So that is on the House floor right now. That is a House bill. So it's going to make it difficult because if the House doesn't move on it this week, which it looks like they won't, there's a constitutional 5-day requirement that a bill has to be in the second House for 5 days. So for that bill to move and to get passed into law or to get enacted and sent to the governor, the legislature may have to be in here another week. So the fact that the speaker canceled session for this week in the House could be a problem for that bill. There's another bill, Open Meetings Act. There are 2 bills. There's a House bill and a Senate bill. The Open Meetings Act, which Dr. Rice also mentioned earlier today, would allow public bodies to continue to meet virtually through the end of March of 2021. Right now, as Dr. Rice mentioned earlier, the law ends at the end of this calendar year, And this bill would extend that to the end of March of 2021. If the Senate does meet this week, it could pass its bill and send it to the House next week, which would allow for that 5-day period to be taken care of, and then the House would pass the Senate bill and send it back to the Senate for concurrence. So that bill, I mean, that issue, the Open Meetings Act issue, is definitely still a possibility. There's another bill in the Senate that you may have heard about, Senate Bill 25, which was introduced by a senator from the Upper Peninsula, Senator McBroom, which would permit, not require, but would permit the political parties to get representation from other parts of the state to be candidates on the State Board of Education. The bill would create 8 regions around the state, and then on a rotating basis every 2 years, a political party may select two candidates from their party to run for the State Board of Education. Again, this is only permissive. It does not require the parties to do this, but that is a Senate bill that is on the Senate floor now. Whether that has any opportunity to, again, move into the House and then back to the Senate remains to be seen. So those are 3 bills that we are watching. The Open Meetings Act, I think, has the best chance of all of those bills because there is a lot of support behind those. Not only the Department of Education is heavily supporting those bills, but also Michigan Association of School Boards, as well as the Michigan Association of Counties, the Townships Association, and the Michigan Municipal League, because they all have public bodies that are in the same situation as the State Board of Education. So I will now hand it to Dr. Pritchett if she wants to talk about the draft statement on lame duck issues.
Thank you. The Legislative Committee felt it would be important for the State Board to have a statement that we could share with the legislators regarding this lame duck session, or at least early session into 2021. So it looks as though Marty's going to put it up on the screen, and I'll just read it very quickly. It's pretty short. Given the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic that continue to alter the ways in which local school districts educate children, the state legislature needs to adjust a number of state laws. Local school districts need flexibility in areas such as educator evaluations, the supply of regular and substitute teachers, student and teacher data reporting, and continuing to allow for virtual open meetings of public governmental bodies. The State Board of Education urges action on these critical issues, preferably during the remainder of the current legislative session, if conditions allow. To the extent that this is not possible, then we request that the balance of the issues be resolved in the first 3 months of the new legislative session in 2021.
So yeah, Dr. Pritchett, that is a statement now. I guess it would need to be motioned and seconded for consideration, or maybe discussed.
Yeah, we'll pass it to Superintendent Rice, and so we can discuss.
Very, very good. Could I have a motion to approve?
Also, I'll second.
So we've got a motion and a second that a motion. It's now open for discussion. Mr. McMillan.
Yeah, all of it looks good except the Open Meetings Act. I hear from a lot of people who are just tired of elected officials hiding behind cameras and hiding at home, and making, especially counties where they've got these health departments that are just going derelict and just doing crazy things in their minds, at least, and they don't have any ability to really confront in a very, professional manner, but nonetheless make it clear to these elected officials how upset they are. And so, as I said back in October, if there's a will, there's a way. They can easily meet. It might take a little bit of logistics. They might have to devote an hour or two to thinking about it, but any public body can easily meet during this time. And so it's, and to be able to allow the citizens to address in public, in person, their concerns. So I strongly oppose, and I'm currently advocating and trying to get people to stop these bills, and so that come January, people, bodies will need to be meeting in person. So I can't, other than that, I think this is fine, but I can't support it with that in there.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. President Albridge.
And I would not support it without that language. I think we have to recognize that it is safer for us to be meeting in this manner than if we were all in the room together with a bunch of complete strangers. We saw what happened at the legislative hearing just last week with people refusing to wear masks, speakers not wearing masks. Now there's, a potential for some COVID outbreaks. It's simply not safe at this time. And I would argue that we are actually probably more accessible meeting virtually the way we are than we ever would be if we were sitting in Lansing and people had to drive to Lansing in order to to speak to the State Board of Education. Right now, you can do that. You can do it directly to the board, although virtually from the comfort of your own home, wearing your pajamas if you so choose, and you are not forced to wear a mask, and you are not forced to be 6 feet apart from everybody else outside of your home. So the other thing I will say about that is starting next year, we're also going to have 2 new board members, one of which who does have a pre-existing condition that would preclude her from participating fully in the board meetings if that were the case under the current circumstances. So, and she's not alone in those regards. There are other people who fall under those circumstances as well. So I firmly believe that the legislature needs to pass this. And I actually think, the end of March probably will not get us where we need to be, because we all know that the vaccine will not be readily available for the general public by the end of March. So I would actually encourage the legislature to extend that even further, allowing for the option of meeting virtually. Doesn't mean we necessarily have to, but allowing for that option much longer throughout 2021. The only other thing that I would say is I appreciate the second paragraph. It does say to request that the balance of the issues be resolved in the first 3 months of the new legislative session. I'm wondering if 3 months is actually perhaps too long for some of these things, because by then, the school year will be almost over. And so I don't know that it will necessarily have the impact that we hope that it has. I'm fine leaving it 3 months, but I would also be more than open to perhaps 1 to 2 months instead. Those are my comments.
So just a reflection on the very, very last of the comments.
Huge.
That the 3 months.
I'm sorry. I turned something down. I didn't hear what you said. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, with respect to the last of the comments around 3 months, that was something that initially came from our discussion with the ed orgs, who debated many of these same issues and who felt that the lame duck session was going to be skinny and that we needed a little bit of an extra time, and felt that 3 months was reasonable. I am concerned as we get close to the end of that 3 month period, what that means for particular issues. So I agree, but in general, I think we're talking about a 3 month period. Ms. Fecto.
Yeah. Ooh, am I on?
Yes.
Yeah. My concern is with limiting this flexibility to just during the pandemic time. I know it's prefaced by given the effects of COVID-19, but I don't want, for instance, the special ed of the substitute teacher bill to go beyond, I know it's just till the end of the school year. So and the same thing with, you know, the flexibility to have online meetings for the reason that Tom brings up. I do think there is, you know, I think my feeling is there's more danger to these meetings than him. But I certainly think that once the COVID is done, hopefully, or subsides substantially, that we will go back to regular meetings and regular ways of getting substitute teachers. So I was just thinking to add a statement at the end of paragraph 1 or somewhere in there that makes it clear that that this is for a limited period of time, not for perpetuity. That's my feeling. So, because I'm afraid there might be some people who would love to have substitute teachers that are just have a high school diploma and have that like forever. And I would not want to support that.
Right, and Ms. Fecto, just again, like the reflection on President Ulbricht's last comment, this was meant to be, this came in collaboration with the ed orgs, number one, and the expectation was that this was this school year and this school year only, that this was not an in perpetuity thing at all. I would have no problem amending this to note that this is through this school year. And, you know, at that point, if conditions continue on particular issues, then we need to re-reflect.
Yeah, I that would be great with me.
President Ulbricht, Chairwoman Ramos Montini, members of the committee, Ms. Snyder, Dr. Pritchett, any concerns with that friendly amendment?
Will you please read that paragraph inserting the recommended amendment, please?
I'll give it a shot, unless you want to do it.
No, Ms. Fecto, this would be great. This is yours to amend.
I guess the last sentence, starting with the last sentence of paragraph 2, local school districts need flexibility in areas such as I'd say during this pandemic, local school districts need flexibilities in areas such as educator evaluations that supply regular substitutes, teachers, student and teacher data reporting, and continuing to allow for virtual meetings of public school bodies until the end of this the current academic year, or until June 30th, 2021. I don't know, does that seem like it just applies to the
well, the academic year is going to end a little bit differently for different districts. Do you want to say through June 30th, 2021?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's good.
There's a little typo there.
Oops.
Oh.
Serious leap year. That's a serious leap year there.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a friendly amendment. I don't hear any objections to that friendly amendment. If I do hear an objection to the friendly amendment, I'd be happy to vote on the friendly amendment, and then on the bill as noted. Hearing no objection to the friendly amendment is added. Dr. Pritchett, a comment.
Yeah, my only comment was going to be, and I'm fine with this statement, that obviously any legislation that is written, I know that you, Dr. Rice, and our representatives are making sure that we've got some timing in that legislation. So, but I'm fine with this friendly amendment because it serves the same purpose. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McMillan, a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I do know that the Open Meetings Act and being able to meet online is a little different for a statewide body like ours, and there is more opportunity for people in the UP to not have to drive to make comment and stuff like that. But my main, as I said before, I think county commissions meeting, I've heard stories of school boards not allowing public comment or conveniently having problems allowing public comment and in the area and in city councils. So I think that again, it's a way that people are avoiding accountability for some of the decisions that are being made, and I really strongly oppose it. So
okay, thank you very much. Any other comments, questions, reflections?
Yeah, I've got a point here. Just so there's no confusion that this date does not only concern this part of it, maybe moving the date up here.
Yeah, I see your point.
Yeah, I don't want them to think that that date only applies to the Open Meetings Act.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for that addition, Mr. Ackley. Ms. Snyder, a comment.
Well, I'm just curious, do we have board member comments right after this vote?
We have board member comments that are
committee member comments. I apologize.
We certainly could. We have board member comments that are following the state and federal legislative report.
Okay. I guess my question, Lupe, is will you ask for any further legislative committee comments? I would like to make a comment. Once we get through the vote.
Okay, well, I call
Not a problem.
Call the question.
Okay, great.
Very good.
The other thing I would suggest in terms of directly related to the vote that we're doing right now that we just talked about is, I wonder if we will see in the future at some point in time that engaging in meetings in various situations such as COVID, which is what we're going through right now, there are lots more opportunities in our future for viruses and bacteria. There still are that we're probably not even discussing. So the concept that if we don't all participate virtually, we don't have respect for perhaps a new board member that would come on and might have to participate virtually is not exactly accurate. We just did, when we hired you, Michael, we had an interviewee that participated virtually. I thought that was interesting, and some of us had comments on that. But even as we move forward, we do understand that, and we've seen that people can participate virtually, but not necessarily everybody has to. So as we move into the future of what it looks like to deal with things like pandemics and viruses and bacteria, different things that are happening in our society, and how to engage everyone nevertheless, it won't necessarily, I don't think, need to be a blanket concept that it can only be in person or it can only be virtual. So I do just suggest flexibility in our thinking there as we move forward. And I think that's sort of in line with the concept of people who are vulnerable still being able to engage, just depending on how we move forward and how we all come together on the other side of this. So I will reserve my other comments for once the vote's over.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Snyder. President Olbridge.
I'm not sure how our conversations tend to devolve by the end of the day, but it's getting really challenging, and I think that we need to stop trying to find a way to take everything personal. Nikki, my comment about the other board member and respecting the fact that she might have different challenges has nothing to do with you. and was not in any way directed at you or any other board member. It was simply a reflection of a reality. So let's try to focus on the task at hand and not try to identify ways to personalize comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a motion. It is seconded. We've had our discussion. Ms. Schneider, if you would be kind enough to do a roll call vote.
Hecto.
Yes.
McMillan.
No.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
Ramos Montini.
Yes.
Snyder.
No.
Tilly.
Yes.
Albridge.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And is there anything else from members of the committee? I understand that Ms. Snyder wanted to add something.
Yes, thank you. And just to be clear about my comments just now, Cassandra, it's not a personal thing. It was actually my efforts to suggest that a situation like that would not be what we would do to consider a blanket policy, rather to give people access regardless of their situation. So not a thing personal at all. So I would like to discuss some of the things that we're talking about and what we just voted on, evaluations, assessments, different things, but I would really like to make comments about assessment data from the students' lens, if you will. And I have several comments that kind of wrap up what we've all talked about throughout the last few months in legislative committee, and then some of the comments you've had, Dr. Rice. So assessment data is often used by local districts to make decisions according to where to put their resources, what students need extra help, and in what areas. So to me, it's really important that we not lose sight of how important that information is, and really that it drives resolving our system's equity issues. So before moving forward, Dr. Rice, you made many comments about the NAEP versus the M-STEP, but I think there's more beyond those comments, including the following. So NAEP is not used to make decisions about state funding, resource allocation, or specific state policy. It's a biannual external check on generalized student achievement in states. NAEP results are not available for students, classrooms, schools, and most districts because unlike the annual universal administration of the M-STEP or other state tests, NAEP is random. It's a stratified sample administration where some kids take part of the NAEP and those parts are combined to give state results. NAEP administration is conducted and set up by NCEF. And because it's sampled, having a generalized population in each state for comparison state to state, it may be more challenging in 2021 because of options for instructional delivery. State test data, however, is more relevant for making state level policy, funding decisions, as well as local decisions on teacher placement, professional development, school leadership, instructional materials, and identifying initial student strengths and weaknesses at the beginning of next school year. Just because states may not have an external check from NAEP, which states only have every other year, does not mean that states should not test. State test data is far more valuable for decision making than the NAEP. Parents and students do not get NAEP results for their child, but they do get the state test results. So I understand and I have a strong concern in over-testing, and I've voiced that concern since I joined the board. But I am seriously concerned at this point that we are going too far in the other direction, where we aren't discussing the importance of the most relevant testing and what that information means for our kids who need that awareness and information the most. Testing has always been a part of the administration of education. I said that earlier. It's not going away. It shouldn't go away. It's an important part of the learning process. So as far as M-STEP goes, from my student lens, it's a test that has more flexibility and local control in how it's administered. And we've talked about how this disaggregation of that data is directly applicable to each one of our Michigan kids right now, even as we traverse these challenges together. I think we should use it to assess the impact of COVID on our students' learning, not to be punitive to teachers. And I repeat this, parents and students get the results the state administers after the test. We will reconvene in the future and really come together on what to do next. So it's my recommendation that we not request a waiver so that we would be able to come to the table with relevant data for who needs it most and when it is most needed. I'm pretty passionate about us being able to make sure that we can reach our kids and not before it's too late. So thank you for listening to those comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Snyder. I appreciate that. And just to make 100% sure that everybody is clear, both on the board and in the listening audience, in no way, shape, or form did I suggest that we shouldn't assess. I suggested that we ought to use locally chosen, locally administered benchmark assessments. They are less time consuming. They are more immediately available. Local school districts have markedly more control over them than they do over M-STEP results. M-STEP results protocol is wholly determined by the state of Michigan and are enormously time consuming. They take the better part of the spring to accomplish in elementary schools. So I am certainly not suggesting no assessments. I am suggesting that those checks on where children are be done with locally determined benchmark assessments, which local school districts choose every single year. By the way, I might add, those locally determined benchmark assessment results are shared with parents as are M-STEP results. The only difference is that they're shared more quickly. The M-STEP results take months to come back, whereas the benchmark assessments can be back within the school immediately, and then to a parent within a week or within a few weeks. So they're much, in my view, much more helpful, particularly in the midst of a pandemic. Now, once the pandemic is over, we have a statutory responsibility to return to those state summative assessments, irrespective of whether they might be helpful or not. So the disagreement is not whether to test or not, it's rather how to assess children in the midst of a pandemic. But that said, if the board would like to vote specifically on whether we should have a waiver of state summative assessments, whether we should request a waiver of state summative assessments, previously the board was unanimous on this, but if the board would like to revote and make a determination of whether we should do this, we can certainly do that. Okay, I don't necessarily hear a motion on the table or a second thereof. Anything else, Ms. Ramos-Montini, Chairwoman, on the agenda?
No, we don't have anything else on the agenda, but I want to thank again Marty and his team for all the help that they gave us throughout the 2 years that I was the chair of the legislative committee. And our two members, Judy and Nikki, thank you so much. And of course, Superintendent Rice, thank you for visiting our meetings and sharing your wisdom with us. So thank you so very much. And I leave you with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. Ms. Tilley, do you have a NASB report for us?
No.
Okay, very good. We are at that point of the agenda where it is comments by state board members. Are there any additional comments from board members? We're sitting at 4 p.m. Ms. Snyder, then Mr. McMillan. Ms. Snyder, Mr. McMillan, and Ms. Tilley.
Thank you. I just want to, Lupe, I want to say thank you for what you have done for the children of the state of Michigan. In all of our discussions that we have regularly, I can tell that that is your focus. And so thank you for that. You're someone who fights for the voice of people, and you're a true bipartisan. It takes strength and courage to engage in a way that puts kids first in a bipartisan way, and I find your way to have been beautiful and inspirational. So thank you for that friendship and for that membership. One of the most important things I've heard you say multiple times in many years is how proud you are of being the first Latina voice on the board. And that pride is very much met with humility and encouragement on my behalf. And if I'm being honest with my response, I've heard your great emotion around the importance that this voice continue on. And I just want to say that the Latina voice will be heard, it will be respected, and it will continue on. And we will work together again. I'm very much looking forward to celebrating with you this weekend, your accomplishments, your contributions, your birthday. Michelle, I wanted to say I've appreciated working with you. We both share a fire for all kids, we really do, especially those with special needs. And surely I will miss your kick butt passion as well. So you will both be very missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Mr. McMillan, and then Ms. Tilley.
Yeah, I just wanted to give my appreciation to Lupe as well. I appreciate what you brought to the table, and as a former teacher and in matters of ELA, it's been very much appreciated, and having you sit next to me at least 2 years. Has it been 4 years? I don't know. But I appreciate it. And then Michelle, you know, we've worked well together. I just really do deeply appreciate your leadership. You know, a lot what Cassandra said, just your personal leadership. I mean, what you and Eddie have done is so inspiring and incredible. And I just deeply appreciate you and working with you when the state wanted to shut schools down, and you know, us and Pam and Cassandra and others, you know, we fought together, and just on other matters of high stakes testing and young Zhao coming in, and you know, just different things that we've done. There's a real kindred spirit in a lot of the things that we appreciate and work towards in education. We certainly have differences, but I appreciate how you and others have worked through those with me, and I really will miss you a lot.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Ms. Tilley, then Ms. Fecto.
I have a few things that I wanted to talk about. Since this meeting has started today, during the lunch break, I've been getting contacted about Wayne County Commissioner Jewel Weir. We lost her this morning. Unfortunately, she had a heart attack. She was the longest serving member on the Wayne County Commissioner. She was elected in 1994. And she has been supportive of a lot of fellow Democrats, including myself at times, including this last race for state board. I just wanted to acknowledge her. Also wanted to acknowledge Angela Johnson, who passed a few days ago due to COVID. She was an educator. She was a teacher. She retired from Cass Tech in Detroit. And she was the vice president for the retirees for AFT and DFT, representing AFT and DFT. So just wanted to acknowledge them. Also wanted to make a comment about the charter school situation. And I don't know it in depth, but I do know that, and I know that everybody's, people are on different sides of the issue when it comes to charter schools, and it can be polarizing. So not to get into that part of it, but just to say that my colleague, Dr. Pam Pugh, I know that she would never, you could not pay me to believe that she would ever state anything negative about children, or that they are less of human beings. So we, you know, the whole charter school situation is something else, but I don't like when we try to, or when people try to destroy people for their beliefs. And we can argue all day or be on opposite sides of the table, but she's an advocate for children, so that's preposterous. And then finally, I want to say, you know, to Lupe, definitely thumbs up for your advocacy, the work that you've done on the state board, the work that you do in your community. You have definitely been a strong voice for the Latina community, and your work doing, you know, your Cesar Chavez event that you have graciously invited us all to. And I'm glad to hear that you're going to continue the work and continue to be a voice for not just the Latina community or Latino community, but for children across the state of Michigan. And then Michelle, gosh, you know, you have been my riding buddy a lot of times coming up to Lansing, and we've had a lot of great talks, and I've really gotten a chance to get to know you as an individual, and you have a great heart and a great spirit, and you are definitely passionate about our youth and about special needs youth, and I really appreciate you for that. You were the first state board member to welcome me with open arms when I was campaigning, and I really thank you for that, and I will never forget that. But it's just how welcomed you make me feel. It's just a testament to the human being that you are. And I am definitely going to miss you on this board. You have thought-provoking questions constantly. You make us all think, and it's all in the right place, you know, for our kids and for our teachers. So I really appreciate you. Really appreciate having served this during my first term with both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. It was very
Thank
sweet.
you, Ms. Tilley. Ms. Fecto, and then Dr. Pugh.
Well, thanks everyone for the kind comments. It's very sweet and somehow humbling at the same time. I hope I can live up to all your descriptions of me. Continue to give that those vibes out. I wanted to show off my gift from the board, since I couldn't open it there. I don't know if you can see what they are. I know I've got the blurry background and I can't see if you can see it, but it's they're beautiful bookends, and they're of children pulling in opposite directions. It's something that will be a family heirloom, I'm sure, and it's also inscribed, when children succeed, when we all pull together, in my name and what I served. So thank you very much for this. And I can really do some damage if someone tries to invade my home too. These are like heavy. This is a weapon. I just wanted to make a couple of parting comments, a few parting comments. Thank you all, and it's every one of you I respect and appreciate all the hard work you've done and your dedication. I wanted to, I did want to, another note, talk about the charter school issue that came up during public comment. It really bothers me how the two sides will accuse the other side of not caring about children. I really think all of the teachers, whether you're in a charter school or whether you're in a traditional school, are dedicated and caring individuals. And the principals and administrators who run those schools. My concern with the way we structure charter schools in our state is that it creates some systemic issues that I hope the board can look into. And one of those I know from personal experience is how kids with special needs are treated. And I was looking at the data which Terry and Scott got for me recently. And one of the things I find revealing and validating, because it's what I hear from other parents and have experienced myself, is that if you have a child with some serious needs, then, and they need support like programmatic support, they need parapros, they need these types of supports. The charters, because they're so individualized, they do not have the resources, or they do not provide the resources for these high needs children. And so oftentimes parents with those needs will gravitate towards the traditional public schools, which is a problem because they're not funded, and they're so poorly funded that it puts a drain on the general funds of these schools. So if there's a lot of schools like in Detroit or Saginaw, Flint, Grand Rapids, where they're pulling students without the high needs, that means the balance of the kids with high needs are disproportionately in the traditional schools. And it creates a disparity, and also the linkages with the ISDs and the, charter schools is often not quite connected. So the services are not there. And I've been told personally that, you know, to go look elsewhere because the services that my son with autism needed were not in the school. 35 times I was told that by charter school people, and they just said, we just don't have the services. And so it creates a disparity, and it's not because people are evil, it's a systemic problem. And I think we should look at models like in Massachusetts, where charters are authorized by this state school board, the State Board of Education, and that there has to be more accountability for these kinds of things. More transparency on their spending, as Cassandra has pointed out. When they give all their money to a private organization, they're not subject to the Freedom of Information Act. You can't verify reports, and you don't know. And if they're for profit, which 80% in Michigan are, that means money that should be going back to the students and back to the teachers is not going to them. It's going to make money. And as I've said before, there is a reason why hedge fund managers love charter schools, because they're so profitable, but they're profitable because they're skimming somewhere, because there's only so much you can get money from. So I think we need to look at having alternatives for kids, choices for kids that don't disrupt the community, have the charters be part of the regular school district, where teachers have the right to have a union contract and have decent wages and protections, and where services can flow to those students. So that's my point on charter schools. And the things that people are saying about Pam is just so misconstrued. And to say that she's like supports calling children in charter schools, they're 3/4 of a person or something like that. It's obscene, really. It's really ridiculous. And we need to move past these sort of personal attacks. I want to say to people, LGBT or teachers everywhere, join your unions, participate in the political action that these unions provide you. They are meaningful. They make a difference. You want to have protections from being treated unfairly. Make your union in your local district stronger by participating and supporting it. And so we care about issues of justice and making sure teachers are treated fairly. I think you need to advocate for your union and making it stronger. And Lupe, don't now that I have more time, I think I can actually get to Grand Rapids. So please invite me to the Senior Chavez events. I promise you I will come. But you have to come to Detroit and participate in our Senior Chavez activities here too. There's some pretty awesome things in our Mexican American community, and my children, who are, many of them are Mexican American, would love to meet you. I think you met one of my kids at one of the Jefferson, they don't call it that anymore, legacy dinners, but anyway, just thank you. And I've really enjoyed and learned so much from each one of you, all of you. And Judy, your depth of knowledge, I'm so glad you're here. And and Ellen Lipton, and anyway, you're all in good hands. You're going to carry on and do great things. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Fecto. Dr. Pugh and Dr. Pritchett, and then Mr. Bondano.
Wow, to come behind Tiffany and then Michelle. Hopefully my eyes are not red. And to Michelle and to Lupe, again, this is not by, and this is one good thing about being on this virtual meeting, is that I know that you have good internet connection, good phone connection. So when I call, I know that you'll answer. So again, we just appreciate your service so much, and you will be missed. And I also wanted to speak to Nikki brought up some points that I didn't get a chance, I meant to mention earlier. And one is that our children are in an unprecedented time. And we know that teachers, parents, the State Board of Education, Michigan Department of Education, school boards, we're all doing all that we can to help our children get through this time. And I believe that we will. It'll take more arguments, it'll take more contention, but I think that we will get there. And I do also agree that now and on the other side of this, we do need to be looking at what after school programs and other supports look like, in addition to the social and emotional supports that are being provided and are being stood up by the department. I do want to speak to the Michigan Commission of Civil Rights, and we know by now that they've released a report, and the report is entitled Education Equity in Michigan, and that report was released in September. If you have not seen the report, I know I can get it to you, someone from the department can get it to you, of course you can Google it. But the report was really intended to provoke conversation, and conversation around the quality of education, and making sure that the quality of our children's education that they receive is not predicated on where they live, the color of their skin, the income of their family, or whether or not they are a special needs child. The commission penned the report as a part of their constitutional duties. And it was also as a response to follow-up from a report that they did around the Flint water crisis and some inequities that they unearthed during those investigations. So a couple of Mondays ago, on November 23rd, Michigan Commission on Civil Rights held a special meeting. I spoke, and it was 2 panels. And really the purpose of the meeting was to give charter schools who opposed portions of the report an opportunity to speak and have their voice heard. I spoke at an initial panel, and then there was a follow-up panel from the charter schools. And the comments that I made in particular, I was not the only person who spoke in support of the report, but the comments that I made in particular have, as you heard, have drawn fire from the charter school groups. And I get, people, they talk. I mean, I don't have issue with that. And I appreciate the comments. I've received several in my email, and I really hope to respond to each of those regarding my position on the issue. I hope to get to them, and I will get to them eventually. But I want to use this time to just iterate or reiterate some of the facts and the truths that I stated, and I still stand on. Some of the things that I've brought up here, board member Tilley has brought them up here. We've talked about, all of us have talked about inequitable funding. And I don't think that the charters disagree with this, but inequitable funding practices and how it's disproportionately impacted our low income Black and Brown communities, our rural as well as our urban school districts. We've talked about districts like Benton Harbor, Detroit, Flint, and how those schools, Saginaw too, but in particular those three, but how they've fallen victim to stereotypes. A lot of times those stereotypes, I see them as being racist stereotypes. And those stereotypes are that the dire conditions of our district that serve our children who are low income, children who are of color, are solely due to misspending, overspending, and even corruption by the local leadership. And we know that that's not the sole issue. As it relates to leaving the 25% of funding with the district that a child lives in, we know that when those stereotypes go forward, we know that parents begin to pull their children out. When you start talking about school closures, is the school going to close? It destabilizes that district. And we know that the parents pull their children and place them elsewhere. And that further strips the school districts of funding and leads to the continuation of this cycle of this decreased funding. Again, this destabilization happens, and often it's a marketing tool for charters. And for the districts, and you've heard me say this before, it's like a sledgehammer to our traditional public school districts, to their funding, as well as to their reputations. And as it relates to charter, so in order to stabilize those school districts, I do agree. And as Michelle mentioned, we can look to some of the models, such as the Massachusetts model, where some of the funding does stay with that home school district. And we can talk about the looking at the procurement policy, the check registry data, the procurement contracts that Cassandra pulled forward, and I've had the opportunity to look at. And we can see that it's clear that there is a difference between financial transparency that's provided, the data that we were able to compare Detroit to the surrounding charter schools in the Detroit area. Michelle always has been a staunch advocate for our special needs children and has definitely followed the data as it relates to the discrepancies between traditional schools and our charter schools as it relates to special education, and she's talked about that today. During the comments, I also pointed to the fact that for-profit charters schools often lease facilities to themselves and are allowed to avoid paying property taxes. I talked about the fact that charter schools were able to draw from small business paycheck protection program loans during the crisis from the federal government. They were also able to do this while getting emergency stimulus money from the Congress that our traditional public schools did. So drawing from funding that small businesses would typically draw from, and I might add that 40% of Black businesses, small businesses, closed in April, and many of them, Black and Brown, did not get that PPP funding. Michelle has talked about what has driven many of the charters to be in urban areas, and we can look at bills, federal bills that have provided tax incentives for banks and equity funds to invest in charter schools in underserved areas and take advantage of tax credits. And we know that Michigan leads the nation in schools run by for-profit firms. So when we talk about the differences, the information speaks for itself. And to the point of me not caring about our children and thinking less of our special ed and our children of color, That couldn't be further from the truth. As the chair of the NAACP Education Committee, standing with the commission, I'm talking about a report that was written by the Commission for Michigan Civil Rights. And so it is my life mission, has been, to bring about equitable health, education, and well-being for all of our children. And I'm gonna just end with this. And yes, while I do call for the 25% to remain, I do agree with that with the school district. That funding, do not advocate for, nor did I say that that funding should come from the classroom. We talked about the management companies. Management companies can take up to 100% of the funding, and they receive foundation allowance dollars, or they receive funding. We also know that the authorizers get up to 3% of the funding. So I think that those are the areas that we should pull the funding from. And again, the commission's report was a conversation starter. I do not advocate for funding coming from the classrooms, from those teachers' salaries, from the education that those children receive. But there are profits that are made that I think that we could take a look at. And I think it's time for us to do that. And I commend the commission for moving forward with this report and having this thought-provoking conversation. So I will leave it there. I will wish everyone happy holidays. For me, that holiday is Christmas. And I just wish you well and wish your families well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pugh. Dr. Pritchett?
Thank you. I just want to take a couple of moments here to express my appreciation to Michelle and to Lupe. You, both of you, have truly changed the world for the better in your own special way. Lupe, your enthusiasm for teaching is apparent and it's infectious. Every time you talk about when you were a teacher, every time you talk about when you were in the building and as an administrator, it's very, very clear that that is where your heart is. And we so appreciate that. In particular, I have appreciated over the years because remember, I used to sit in the peanut gallery too, so it's been longer than 2 years. That you would bring up concerns brought to you by our first line educators, our teachers, and they trusted you. They'd still trust you, and you would bring their concerns to the board table and bring that perspective and center everyone's conversation back to how is this affecting a classroom? How is this affecting a child or a group of children? Your leadership on the legislative committee since I've become a member of the board has been right on. You are right. You keep us to a schedule and you mean it. You were always there. You were always organized and I appreciated that also. I also admire you for your involvement in your community. I am amazed at how involved you really are, and I know the Grand Rapids community and the communities that you are involved in appreciate that and will continue to appreciate that. So thank you so much. Michelle, your core values of respect for all individuals and your sincere advocacy for special needs children for both children and adults is so apparent in every conversation you have. Again, I remember when you first came on the board, and I think it was probably the first meeting where a conversation would happen, and then all of a sudden you would raise your hand and you would bring forth, but have we thought about this? But I guess I'm wondering about this. Never in an adversarial way, but one that there was no question. I think Nikki said it best. You had a kick butt attitude that you better take attention to this one because this needs to be looked at. So we appreciate that. You are authentic. You are thorough. The fact that you and your husband have taken and nurtured children who are so often forgotten, are so often put off to the side, is a testament to your life. And I am honored to have worked with both of you and to have served with you on this board. So thank you. And a special thank you to the kids in Michigan. It's been an interesting first 3 months of this school year, but you know, the more I interact with them, even beyond my 2 granddaughters, they are resilient. And they teach us every day what our job's supposed to be. They have high expectations of all we adults, and we need to meet those expectations together. Throw the partisanship away. We've got a crisis here, and we need to fight it together, not apart. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. Mr. Bondano?
Thank you. Just very quickly, first of all, I know I haven't been on the board long, but in these few months that I've been here, I did want to say thank you to board members Fecto and Ramos Montini, especially because I think it's clear at everything you do just in the short time that I've been here that you do everything with such immense passion and love for our students. And it's been inspiring to see it just in this short time and to hear the thoughtfulness with which you approach all issues. The kinds of concerns and questions that you raise are always so particular and at times make me step back and think, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And I truly appreciate the thoughtfulness and the hard work and the passion that you guys have brought to this. And so I know I haven't been here long, but I did want to express that before you go. With all the charter school business that we've been discussing today, I did want to bring the perspective of someone who has taught both in a charter school and in a public school. All of my pre-certification experience as a paraprofessional, and then my first year of teaching was all in a charter school. And then after that first year, I moved to Oak Park Public Schools. And I certainly have seen many things in both settings, but I can say for certain that being in an atmosphere in which I have a union to protect me, in which there is no discussion of profit beyond keeping the district, in the black, so to speak, it is a world of difference. And for a variety of reasons, when I was in my first year of teaching at that charter school, by this time of that school year, I was searching for any career not teaching because I truly thought if this is what teaching is, I'm not meant for it. I was saved by my transition into the public schools. So when we talk about the money and I've seen firsthand the way that those charter schools can draw funds from the public schools and the way that they can make the kinds of decisions that would never fly in a public school setting, and the way that at times employees are treated in ways they would never be treated in the public school. I'm truly glad that that is an issue this board is looking at. And I know my experience is limited, and I certainly don't presume to speak for all charter school employees or all charter school experiences by any stretch of the imagination, but from my own experience, I am glad that those issues are being brought up. And the last thing I wanted to say was I wanted to thank Board Member Tilley for honoring Angela Johnson. She was also my mentor teacher when I was a student teacher. I was her last student teacher before she retired, and her passing is devastating. She was an amazing educator and did so much for her community and for her students and for other teachers. And she'll very much be missed. So I wanted to thank Board Member Tilley for honoring her in that way today. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bondano. Ms. Ramos Montini, benediction?
My next meeting just arrived. Anyway, so yes, I am. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not crying, aren't you, Michelle? I'm glad they didn't get us to that level that we cry. But I'm very, very thankful for your friendship, for your expertise, for your wisdom, for your passion. We had a good team of passionate advocates for our students throughout the state. And so I enjoyed working with all the deputies and the directors and everybody that I met in the Michigan Department of Education. Friends forever. Look, like this, friends forever. And so my group of friends has really extended. You know, and Michelle, I better show what we got, because Maryland, I don't think will be very happy we don't showcase the children that we got. But I have it right here next to my desk. We're stronger pulling together. We're stronger pulling together. And so I want to thank each and every one of you. I think it has been an experience, an 8-year journey. Think about it. We were 8 years younger 8 years ago. And I'm having a birthday real soon. Anyway, well, I want to thank you. And of course, again, I want to thank all of the state of Michigan and every way that they supported me, through Twitter, through Facebook, through Instagram. And so thank you very, very much. Feliz Navidad y un próspero año nuevo. And I think you understand that, right? All right. Okay. Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just one last thank you to our warriors for children. Ms. Ramos Montini, Ms. Fecto, we appreciate you enormously. And we are going to continue to be in touch and to draw from your wisdom. Board members, future meeting dates, January 12th, February 9th, March 9th, all Tuesday, all at 9:30 a.m. If there are any topics board members would like included in future meeting agendas, please notify Marilyn or me. Let the record show that it is 4:38 p.m. and depending upon whose agenda you're looking at, that may mean that we're letting out early. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, stay healthy, stay strong. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be well, guys.